Hello, everyone. This is Ben Dunn, your AP Sensei, with my brother from another mother, Steve O. And welcome to the AP Dojo, where we talk about all things comics and pop culture and movies and whatever else comes upon our mind these days. As whatever pops in our head, mostly. And I do have
Yeah,
one big head, that's for sure.
we'll see where
So,
the road leads us.
well, let's go over some of this stuff. It's been one crazy week, has it not, with the State of the Union address, and then finally taking out the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran. Who would have thought? I never would have
Mhm.
thought. I mean, I was like, I go to bed one night, and then next day, oh, he's gone.
Yes, but in the conspiracy they said he's still alive and in a bunker somewhere. So I
Oh
don't know.
yeah, sure. Just like
We'll see.
just like Elvis and Michael Jackson, right?
And
So
Bruce Lee.
Bruce Lee, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We know they're all alive. They're part of some sort of international cabal running the governments, everything else like that.
Wait,
So
wait. We have some people to welcome. Hi, Lunchbox Comics. Hello, Retro Days.
it's a perfect plot for a comic book, wouldn't you say? No.
Hmm.
So it was, yes, it's been a very interesting week. I think we're seeing history being made. Also a lot of things going on in the pop culture landscape.
Hmm.
As you know, it looks like Netflix has bowed out in purchasing Warner Brothers, which is kind of interesting. For the
Hmm.
longest time, they were the odds-on favorite to uh, being able to get Warner Brothers. Oh, we've got some comments already. See here.
Hmm.
Uh, Lunchbox says, "What's up, chat? Who else is looking forward to Ben Dunn and Steve will drop some knowledge on us?" Yes, we are going to drop some heavy-handed knowledge on all who are participating. So be ready. It's going to be a wild and bumpy ride. And then
Hmm.
we have somebody for Retro Days. Welcome back, Retro Days. We missed you. How can any knowledge be dropped without Larry? I know, right? Geez, Larry. Larry is our yin to our yang. We have to. He's our counterbalance, as they say. He's he's our zen.
Zen is not the word for Larry.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. Let's see here. Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because I'm talking about Lunchbox Comics. Lunchbox Comics. That you know, Lunchbox Comics. That sounds very familiar. I know I've read this, know who this guy is. But anyway, as we're not going to get into politics because we try to avoid that. We are
Mhm.
just here to have fun. We're here to have some conversation on pop culture and comics and stuff like that. So, as the title pretends, is that we are going to talk about how to succeed in comics without really trying, based on the movie on how to succeed in business without really trying. So,
Wait,
oh,
comics is a business?
Lunchbox
When?
Comics. He is the creator of Adventures of Sig and Joe, a fantastic little indie comic. You should check it out. Send me a link, Lunchbox Comics, and we will see what we can do.
Mhm.
Also known as Lunchbox Warren. Oh, he has an alias known as Lunchbox Warren,
I
like in
haven't
Warren Publications, perhaps. Maybe
no,
they're
I
related. Okay.
now I'm interested. Actually actually, Lunchbox, I have a Lunchbox story for you. Are you ready for this?
Oh gosh,
This
yes.
is
Tell
this
us, Steve.
is I
Enlighten us.
okay, so remember that, Rose Bowl swap meet you went to years ago? I took you
The
to?
the which one?
That Rose Bowl swap meet?
Oh yeah. Oh my God, that was fantastic. I
Yeah,
need to
this was
go
like
there.
the king of swap meets back in the it still kinda is, I mean, it's
Yeah,
still
I've seen some YouTube videos of people going. There seems more like a stand to sell really cheap merchandise and stuff nowadays.
it's a fair it's more of a fair. It's a
Yeah.
fair and a lot of boomer stuff, so anyway, so I went one of the times when I went without you, there was a guy who had, like, collectible lunch boxes there.
hmm
You know, it's all outside in the California sun, and he
hmm
has had, like, the same ones month after month after month, so they've been sitting these metal lunch boxes and plastic ones have been sitting out in the sun for hours a day, 12 months a year, however many years. So some of them are a little faded, but he had one. So you know that the Bumblebee Man on The Simpsons is based on an actual Mexican sitcom, right?
Yes, I know
Okay,
that.
so it's the Chapulín Colorado, the red cricket, basically, is what it's doing.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that guy had a lunchbox of that sitcom, the Chapulín Colorado. So I was like, oh man, this would be great. I was willing to pay $50 for it. I was like, I got to get this if it's like $50 or less. He wanted $300 for that thing.
Oh shit, really?
Yes.
Well, no wonder it's just sitting there month after month.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
it was more of a display than an
uh,
actual sale.
Richard said one way to succeed is to not forget to trademark the name of your title, like certain people who will not be named. I wonder who he's referring to.
Uh-oh.
Well, the thing is that speaking of which, trademarks are very expensive. That's the problem. You can do a
Mhm.
copyright very easily, very cheaply, but if you want a trademark are for people who are serious about, wanting to exploit their IP, and they are
Right.
very expensive. It can cost you quite a pretty penny. The trademark office wants to know that you're serious about wanting to protect your trademark. And so, and that's the thing about the difference between trademark and copyright is that, uh, all this public domain stuff that's falling, all this stuff that's falling into the public domain, you have to be
Mhm.
careful because there is, even though the copyright may have fallen into public domain, there's still people on the trademark, so you have to be very careful not to tread, on anyone's trademark, and they will jump on you,
Yeah,
like
well,
bees on honey.
yeah, in a lot of cases, you can reprint the original work, but you can't use it for something else.
You can't
And so, like,
exploit the character for your own
right,
original material.
which was
Well,
a
a lot of
problem.
people seem to ignore that, to be honest.
Well, that was a problem with like a lot of the pulp characters because Ben and I were looking into getting, doing stuff with the pulp characters, and of course Edgar Rice Burroughs is like the king of that.
Hmm.
But his estate is very savvy. Well, now they are, but they're very savvy, and pretty much every proper noun in a Burroughs book has been trademarked. So you can't say unless you get their license or whatever. You can't say Barsoom or Pellucidar or Jane Porter or Tarzan or John Carter. That's the problem Dynamite ran into was they thought, oh well, the Tarzan went into the public domain in 2012, and then it was like, yeah, but you can't call him Tarzan. You have to call the comic Lord of the Jungle or something like that.
Well, I want to preface that we are not trademark lawyers. We are not copyright lawyers, but we know a little bit about, copyright and trademark since we're in the business of that.
Hmm.
Usually, if something falls into public domain, you have to be very careful, that you stick strictly to the things that have fallen into the public domain, first of all.
Right.
You can't there's certain things that were introduced much later, like for instance, for instance, Superman, when he finally goes into public domain, you can't use kryptonite, you can't use him flying, you have to use the original costume he has, he doesn't have X-ray vision, doesn't have heat vision, doesn't have any of that stuff, so you have to be very, very careful not to tread, you can't use Lois Lane, you can't use Jimmy Olsen, you can't use Daily Planet because those were all introduced much later and they'll still be under trademark and copyright
Hmm.
protection, but you can, I mean, I think if you're going to use anything that's public domain, you need to be, like I said, be very careful. And I know that as long as you don't really, the main thing that the people protect is the logo, because
Hmm.
people identify with that. Any symbols, that they trademark, and any use of the name on a cover. Now, if you stick the character inside your book, without using the name on the cover, it's a pretty gray area, but you could probably get away with it. Now, like I said, I'm not a lawyer, so don't take my word for it.
Right.
You take your chances, basically. So if you want to take that chance, you can do that. But you could stick like the Steamboat Willie version of Mickey Mouse on your cover, just be careful, using the word Mickey Mouse because it is still a trademark, name
Right.
on the owned by Disney.
Yeah.
Same with a lot of other IPs and things like that. Oh,
I
here's
think aren't those Superman Fleischer cartoons public domain, but
yes, actually, the Max Fleischer Superman cartoons are in public domain.
Yeah, which is why you got all those
surprisingly
cheap
enough.
VHS tapes of Betty Boop
Right.
and Superman.
It's crazy to imagine any
Oh,
version of Superman being in public domain.
mhm.
I know, but come on, man. They've got characters what, nearly 100 years old. Am I correct? I'm introduced in 1938. So it's a very old character. I mean, I, I I bet even the people who originally created it didn't think it was going to last this long. You know,
No,
and but like the Max Fleischer Superman cartoons, there were a lot of interesting things that were introduced in that cartoon that were eventually added to the actual Superman lore and actual canon. Like before the cartoon, Superman didn't fly. You
oh
know,
really?
that's right. He didn't fly. He leapt. That's why they have
Oh,
that leaping buildings in a single bound thing.
well,
But
well, wait. You know why he left, right? Because
yes,
because
because
it was a ripoff of John Carter.
yeah, I mean, if you can't afford a trademark, is there anything you can do to protect? Well, just as copyright is enough. You if you want to spend the money to do a trademark, then you have to be serious about spending that money because that means you're willing to protect it, from other people using it. Usually a copyright is good enough, but if you start actually making some real money, okay, then yeah, you should get a trademark. Okay, because if I'm sure like titles like Lady Death and other big name titles in the indie sphere, like they're all trademarked. They spend the money to get a trademark so that nobody else can use it. Like you could technically do a character called Spawn, because Spawn is a regular word that anybody can use. But you cannot use design a logo that looks like Todd McFarlane's Spawn, and you cannot use a character that looks like his character. But technically, you can use the word Spawn. You just have to be ready for any backlash.
Yeah,
To do it.
his lawyers are going to beat up your lawyers. I'll tell you that.
Absolutely. Apparently, just selling a single issue, even digitally, in normal commerce gives you quite a leg up. Yes, just the mere fact that you publish it is enough to protect you.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's enough, it remains to be seen. Like if you were to both come up, if two people were to come up with, let's say, you come up with, let's say you come up with Monkey Man, okay, and at the same time, Warner Brother comes up with a character called Monkey Man, and they trademark it. Even though you may come up with it first, then you may they may still challenge your copyright. You know,
Maybe the Monkey Man and O'Brien comic has a lawsuit against that Dev Patel Monkey Man movie that came out.
Yeah, you see that's the thing because IPs have become so important these days. Especially in the entertainment industry.
Mhm.
And the more time passes, the fewer good ideas seem to pop up. So
Right.
you have to protect anything and everything that you can. And like it's one of those things you got to protect. Like right now we're going through some things, which I don't want to discuss right now in the open, but I'll let you know about it after the thing. But yeah, it just goes to show you how important it is to do a trademark search, on certain things. Uh,
Oh, that.
that's good to know. I have 4 issues done in my book and so copied. Well, perfect. Yes. Just the mere fact that you did it, and you date it. See, that's the
Mhm.
important thing. You have to date it. A lot of copyrights fall into the public domain because they didn't do a proper copyright. That's a big help.
Right.
You know,
That's why
but
Night of the Living Dead is public domain because they put the copyright at the end of the movie or something. It was some technicality like that.
well, that's right. And uh, if you do a new version of it, you can trademark and copyright that version of it. Let's say you were to do like a colorized version of the Night of the Living Dead. That version is yours, and you can trademark it.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that doesn't stop people from taking the original black and white version and do something with theirs.
Hmm.
But that version you did is a trademark yours. That's why do you think Ted Turner colorized all those black and white movies? Because he knew if he did a new version of them, he would own them. He would own those versions of them. That's as long as you do something significantly different with a public domain thing, you can trademark it yourself. You can own it yourself. But that doesn't stop people from taking. That's why public domain is public domain. I mean, how many different versions of Wizard of Oz have you seen? But still
Yeah.
registering. Oh yeah, if registering it uh, is gives you an extra layer of protection. You know, if you put the copyright notice in your actual publication and date, then you're somewhat protected. Registering it officially gives you an extra layer of protection. That means all that really means is that you sent the copyright and the government, U.S. government, recognizes your copyright. So that if somebody were to do something that challenges your copyright, you can say, "Hey, I registered it with the U.S. government, on this particular date, so it belongs to me." So that pretty much protects you, as far as that concerned. I mean, I know because AP has been through a lot of cease and desist and copyright challenges and things like that. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but I'm sure you remember I'm sure you remember the Tomorrow Man DC kerfuffle that we had back in the 90s.
No, I didn't even hear about that. What happened?
Oh, you didn't know about this?
No.
Okay. This is a good story. We were just talking about this.
That's why the people are here.
Okay, so Tomorrow Man, I created Tomorrow Man in the pages of Ninja High School, issue number 16 to be precise, it takes it about 1989, and but then in the 90s, mid 90s, I think in the mid or then, DC Comics were coming out with an Alan Moore anthology title called Tomorrow's Stories. Okay, yeah, Tomorrow's Stories, and hold on, see. Story time, Minute Steve. Yes, we love story time. So they actually sent us a cease and desist on Tomorrow Man. Okay, and I say, what the heck? They're not even similar to each other. So we actually challenged it, and it went as far as our lawyers and their lawyers met for a deposition. Okay, and they were talking about how Tomorrow Man was in was what's the word for it, was challenging the Tomorrow's Stories, and we said, no, we tried to explain, look, they're not anywhere near the same. Tomorrow Man's a superhero character, and you're doing an anthology thing, but for some reason they felt that it was a challenge. That how we resolved it. Guess how we resolved it?
How much money did you pay him?
No, we didn't pay him. Okay, so at the time, Paul Levitz was the editor-in-chief of DC Comics.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Levitz is a really great guy. He was a fantastic editor in DC. And all Joe did was call him and say, he said, "Hey, Paul, what's going on here? Why are you doing this?" And he understood. He said, that's crazy. That shouldn't be happening. So he talked to the DC lawyers, and they dropped the whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it can be as simple as that. Something just simple as that.
Years ago, I was working with the guys from Big Bang Comics.
Yeah,
it was through Philip Cable. He was going to do a Night Watchman movie. He did that Knights of Justice pilot.
Yes, I'm familiar with the Knights of Justice.
I was one of the robots in that.
Oh, really? Oh, so
yes.
You got some screen painted.
I'm the robot standing in the back of the getaway truck. So anyway, he
yes, it's good to have connections.
Yeah, big time Hollywood. I'm in my closet. So anyway, he
does that put you in the Screen Actors Guild?
No, but I got credited as a stuntman in the thing. So
really? Congrats.
So anyway, the point is that the Big Bang guys went to Paul Levitz as well, and showed him what they were doing, and he said, and he flipped through it, and he said, "I wish we could still publish comics like these, but like the print runs would be so low that it's not worth our time." So that was kind of like his softball way of saying, like, we aren't going to sue you for this because it's not worth it. So that's why they've gotten to this day. I mean, we were talking about Kablam last time. To this day, they publish those things on Kablam.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what you should do is take those old movies and run them through an AI filter and see what happens.
Well, there's a clip of it on YouTube that's about that's my posterity right
It could
there.
actually turn out to be much better than you expect. You'd be surprised,
I'll
what it
put
can,
my kung fu
spit
movie on
out.
there and make it look like a Shaw Brothers film.
Well, that's well, that's very interesting because I think I'm going to make a Nostradamus prediction here.
Yes.
Is that I think a lot of studios with their old material, they're going to find new life in that stuff by running it through AI.
Mhm.
They're going to just take that old stuff, like an old movie serial, and they're just going to run it through AI and find a new audience with that stuff. You know,
I do not doubt that they're doing that for Star Wars right now.
Oh yeah, of course they're doing that.
Yeah.
Look at the stuff that being produced now by fans. For God,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, some of the stuff is just, you can tell, but it's the technology is getting better and better. It's just getting harder and harder to tell these days. It's just one of those things that's just, where will it be 5 years or 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now? Where will that be? You
I
know,
wonder, so one of the first all CGI movies I saw was, that do you remember did you ever see that first Final Fantasy movie that they did?
I did. That movie made no sense to me at all,
Right. So not
but it
only
was
was
pretty to look at.
not only was the story terrible, it was slow moving as hell, and it had nothing to do with the video game that everybody wanted to see. But on top of all of that, the cherry on top was that it was like this uncanny valley that they tried so hard, because like, even the movie itself, it looked more like an alien movie, alien, the
I still don't know what
the
the story's
xenomorph
about.
alien movies. It looked like Aliens instead of the Final Fantasy you thought you were gonna pay to see. But
Right.
also, like, they spent so much time and effort trying to make the humans look real, but they were still, this was, like, what, 2000 or something? It was still, like, this uncanny valley as far as the animation went. And
Right.
it's and instead of just adopt doing what Pixar did and say, like, "Okay, what can we make all this stuff looks like plastic. Let's do a story about plastic toys." And it still looks plasticky, but we're adding some more textures. Let's do a story about bugs because bugs kind of look like they're made out of some bugs look like they're made out of plastic.
I know when you look at the human characters in that movie, it's just like, ooh, uncanny valley for sure.
Yeah,
But the toys look fine.
yeah, yeah, perfect. Yeah, so and they were the main focus of the story anyway. So the AI stuff, it's like it's got a similar problem right now where it's like almost looks real enough that it's distracting when it doesn't. But if they
Mhm.
came up with like a look or a style that it was just like AI, it'd be like, I mean, right now the haters are like, "Oh, it looked like AI." It's like, yes, but sometimes when you watch an animated cartoon, do you totally believe that that's
Yes, I agree with you.
real?
I think it's in the stage where CGI had that uncanny valley feel to it,
Hmm.
where you could tell that the technology just wasn't there, but they were trying,
Yeah.
to I mean I think the big the first use of CGI from in a movie, from what I understand, is young Sherlock Holmes, with
Oh,
the
really?
stained glass. Supposedly, that's the first use of CGI in
Hmm.
a in a motion picture. I mean, they've used CGI before, but usually they're like vector graphics or something,
Right.
simple. But this is like the first real use of CGI, in a storytelling environment, as part of the actual narrative. Then when Jurassic Park hit, that really exploded CGI. Which
Oh,
is
the game.
ironic because the guy who, from what I understand, it was Phil Tippett who actually sold Spielberg on the idea of using CGI, for the dinosaurs. Because originally, my understanding is that when they were first developing Jurassic Park, they were going to use stop motion.
Mm.
They were going to use a stop motion, but I think Phil Tippett, and I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section. But my understanding is that he shows Spielberg a sample of the CGI dinosaurs, and he was totally sold, on the idea.
Right.
Yeah, and
Well,
that's
also I heard, like, when I around that time, I bought a new Macintosh, and it was a Quadra 610. And the salesman said like whatever the next computer up from that was what they were using on Jurassic Park and movies like that.
Hmm.
But but they used like a room full of those things to
Hmm.
get it together. Now I know the rightfully so people who are afraid of who are concerned about the ecology and nature and all that sort of thing. They're saying like, oh well, the data centers take up a lot of water and all that. It's like yes, they do now, and we have a problem that like a lot of the people who are behind the AI companies are sociopaths and maybe building an infrastructure to collect everybody's data and things like that. And that is a problem. But as far as the technology itself, it's like yes, we went from the first computers being like taking a whole room and you had to put in the punch cards and it did math about as on the same level as a calculator. And then you got the Apple home computer and it's like those were I think the first ones of those didn't do much more than a calculator. So you went from a room to that, still a calculator, and then you had the Quadra 610 plus whatever that next stage up was, could kind of sort of make Jurassic Park if you had a room full of them. So maybe those data centers are not going to be necessary in a couple of years. You know,
Well, I
I've
have no
I've
idea.
I've huh?
I have no idea. All that.
I've heard that there's a thing called a quantum chip that they've already got. And it's like so like if you were a sociopath and wanted to invest in vacuum tubes because this television came along in the 50s and I want to have the corner of the market on vacuum tubes because that's what they run on. And then you find out like a few years later, oh, there's a transistor. You don't need the vacuum tubes anymore. So so you know it's a race that I hope gets sorts itself out in the future. But anyway,
Well, it's a brave new world out there for sure. I mean, just the fact that the technology is changing and we're living. I mean, when you and I were growing up, we were in an analog world. Now kids now they don't know anything about LPs and VHS and typewriters and
right.
fax machines, things like that. And those are just like, what's that, Grandpa? Some sort of that's about as far removed as wax discs were for us. Back in the '80s.
Well,
Shit like that.
I brought my ghetto blaster to work with some cassette tapes. It plays cassettes, and so
Mhm.
I gave a cassette to one of my coworkers. And said, "Here, knock yourself out," and they were like,
Yeah.
"Go ahead and play it." And
Yeah. Which way do I put it in?
you have to
Things
be
like
kind
that.
and rewind first. So, well, the thing is too, you know, like with us, you know, you say you're a boomer, and I'm an old. You're a young boomer, and I'm an old Gen Xer.
Mhm.
And like the boomer and Gen X childhoods were almost very close to identical. It was just kind of like
Yeah,
the names of the TV shows were different.
we're in that gray area.
Yeah.
Like I was born, at the very tail end of boomers, and you were at the beginning of Gen Xers. So,
Mhm.
we're sort of like we merged. The line was blurred. It's sort of like when the Atlantic meets the Pacific Ocean type thing.
Yeah.
And so but I like to think that I'm not so much of a boomer that I can accept new technology. That
No.
I
Yeah.
can't see where the wind is blowing and adapt accordingly.
Right.
I'm not. I remember in my days. Don't do that kind of shit anymore. I do
Well,
remember.
you do, but not for everything.
I do because I've had good experiences with it.
Yeah.
With all this new technology, while I'm sort of getting used to it, and I appreciate it, especially for its convenience. There's something that is lost, by not having the time and the patience, to really sit down and appreciate, stuff that's being made. I mean, now it was not unusual for us to take an LP and literally just sit there and listen to the entire LP and do nothing except read
Oh
the
yeah.
album cover and all that kind. Now, it's difficult to get anybody to sit still for 90 seconds for
It's like
anything.
one song on. Actually, you're right. They don't. They like on Spotify. It's like one song on your playlist of things shuffling through.
Hmm.
You don't really own any of it, and then usually if it gets like it'll go viral. 90 seconds of a song will go viral on TikTok, but
Hmm.
not the whole 3.5 minutes or 5 minutes, or if it's a Meatloaf song, 20 minutes of it. So
Yeah. See, we are now entering, or we have entered into uh satisfaction on demand. Okay, it used to
oh
be
yeah,
we had to wait. We had to be patient. We sat through movies, without being fidgety or looking at our phones or anything else. We actually sat through and paid attention to the movies we were watching. Now, uh, people doom scroll while watching TV shows. And it's actually making a sea change in how movies and TV shows are being written now.
hmm
And that's why it seems like a lot of times one of the big criticisms today that people have is the infantile way of people writing TV shows and movies these days. With
yeah,
comics and books, you still have to read comics and books. So
right,
the writing on those can still be, fairly strong. For the most part, but you can stop a book at any time. You can stop reading a comic anytime. Just go back to it later on.
hmm
But with a movie and TV, you have to be actively engaged. And
hmm
if you're not, then you lose the narrative of the whole thing. And that's the problem nowadays is that nobody sits still for that anymore. I
right,
mean, people still go to movies. People still watch TV.
hmm
But the habits are changing. We're
hmm
seeing, I think slowly, we're seeing a generational change where people are no longer going to be used to watching or sitting still for a 2-hour movie. You
right,
know, and unfortunately, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And also people just don't have patience anymore for anything. People
yeah,
used to or were willing to wait for something or at least sit down, and talk about and listen or see something with intent. And we no longer have that anymore.
yeah. I mean, the other thing I do with the other live stream I do with J-Man, we'll watch a 90-minute, 2-hour movie. Well, we on our own time, we'll watch a 90-minute, 2-hour movie, and then we'll come back to the live stream and talk about it for like 2.5 hours. So it's like,
Hmm.
you know, it could be like it takes like 5 hours to experience the movie. Like, and some of these movies are like, I don't know if you want to even talk about it for that long.
Ah,
Anyway, well, I'll tell you what. On our other Everything Comes Back to 2000 AD podcast, we do like a movies and TV thing. What movies have you seen?
well, let's see. What did I just watch recently? Uh, in fact, I just watched one recently the other day. Oh, it was gosh, who's the guy who plays Drax on the Galaxy of the Guardians of the Galaxy?
Dave Bautista?
Yes, David. I just saw a movie with him in it. It was like one of those. He plays a DEA agent. I can't remember the name of the damn
What
movie.
was The
You
Wrecking
know,
Crew?
no, I don't think so. He plays a DEA agent. He's a teenage son. They're trying to break some sort of cartel drug thing. And
Uh-huh.
it was okay. It was no, it
Yeah.
wasn't. It was not bad.
Mhm.
But there were stretches of the movie where I just got distracted. And just started looking at my phone. And
Yeah.
it didn't keep enough of my interest. And then when something was going boom bang right, and then I look up and see what's going on.
Right.
It's just that long stretches of dialogue. I think people are just distracted by that these days. Unless it's really compelling, story. And that's the thing. I think people who making movies and TV shows they have to keep things going and interesting in order to maintain. I'll be honest with you. Some older movies actually keep my attention more than newer movies.
Yeah.
Like I'll be honest with you. Whenever Harry Potter comes on, any of the movies, I stop and watch it. That and I'll watch when I watch Godzilla movies. I'll stop and watch it.
See,
That
now the Godzilla movies are a perfect example because you have to wait. I mean, there's like there'll be like the opening that grabs you, and then something in the middle that'll kind of like keep you interested. But if you're there to watch Godzilla, you have to slog through a lot of
yes.
dialogue and nonsense, and some of it's like nonsensical stories, and bad dubbing in a lot of cases, and I mean that has its charm too. I don't hate bad dubbing, but and then you get to like if you're lucky, you get half an hour of monster shit at the end. Now, now the thing is with those, uh, well,
I'm- yeah,
anyway,
I'm not saying that all old movies are are riveting. Believe me, there's a lot of bad old movies for sure.
yeah,
You know, and there's a lot of good new movies too.
yeah,
Like I said, it's just the thing people's habits are changing.
right,
And I think that uh, people have to the entertainment industry has to change with that. What I find really interesting is uh, how independent creators are now entering the market. They're no longer being gatekept by the big studios anymore. You see,
mhm.
Godzilla and King Kong are more suspense than anything else. Oh yeah, you got that right.
Well, if you watch the very first old King Kong movie, it's shocking how fast moving that movie is. You
Yeah,
think of like old movies are all talky and all that, but there's something to look at on screen. I mean, it's not like all action, bang, 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 but there's something interesting happening on screen, you know,
well, the thing is, the
throughout.
narrative keeps it going. You
Yeah.
know,
Well,
it's
it's very pulpy.
there's no wasted scenes in there.
Godz
Everything.
King Kong works like a Godzilla. I mean, King Kong works like a pulp novel. That movie, that first one.
Yeah, I don't know. Was that based on a book or anything, or was it
No,
just
but
totally original?
there was a novelization, which I
Well,
read.
now, I mean, did they create that from the ground up, or was it adapted from another source
It
material?
was a screenplay. It was a
Okay,
movie first.
so somebody had the bright idea: hey, let's do a movie of a big giant ape rampaging through New York.
Some genius, you mean? Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
So,
So anyway, just want to share something with you. I saw this was very interesting. Uh, see here. Let me see if I can pull it up.
and we're 36 minutes in. We forgot to shill for AP's releases this
Oh, we'll
week.
do that. Okay,
Okay.
so here we have Paramount announces $110 billion deal for
Hmm.
Warner Brothers. Okay, Warner Brothers agreed to deal with Paramount, so that means Netflix is out. Okay,
Yeah.
so uh, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for Hollywood. I think Hollywood itself is kind of dying anyway. You know, so occurrence of $31 a share. I mean, $110 billion. Do you think Warner Brothers is worth $110 billion? Do you think they
Uh,
overpaid?
Over time, yeah. I mean, yeah, maybe.
That's a lot of money. I mean, uh, it's
Here's
really
Well,
yeah.
here's the thing with everything. Like right now, there's only 5 book publishers, and everything, like all the other books you see that are like that seem like they're other publishers, they're like imprints of these really big publishers.
Hmm.
And then those publishers are part of a conglomerate that usually includes a movie studio, food, oil, it's all, I mean, everything's owned by everything else. So, I don't know, so this deal will probably include IP that can be used for publishing that's somewhere down the food chain. The publisher is owned by this same company that owns them and
Yeah.
everything else. Because I don't
Well,
think I don't think that that's the top. I mean, it might be Warner Brothers, Paramount or whatever, but I think there's going to be like a bigger conglomerate that's even around them. I don't know, and I don't know what that is.
well, assuming it passes FCC muster, and from what I understand, it probably will because
Mhm.
apparently um, the Ellisons is who bought it. You
Right.
know, is good friends with Trump. And
Mhm.
Trump definitely has pull with the FCC. So
Right.
I'm pretty sure, and I'm not, but I can't guarantee it that it'll probably pass mustard. You know, so Discovery Booster Warner. Yes, it certainly did. Now, you know, my understanding is that it's for everything. Okay, I think
Right.
Netflix, all they wanted was the library, from what I understand. You
Mm.
know, but uh, let's see, it's a lot of money, but it's a lot of IPs. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You know, it's a lot of IPs, and that's in conjunction with Paramount. So that if it goes through, uh, which is pretty likely, if I was a betting man, I probably would say it will go through. Um, what does that mean? Okay, it means it's a huge studio now. What do we call Paramount Warner Brothers? Okay,
Mhm.
first of all, is the name going to be changed? You know, or is Warner Brothers going to still remain Warner Brothers and Paramount will still remain Paramount? I doubt it. It'll probably be merged into Paramount Warner Brothers, you know, so that people will know that they're sharing the same thing. And now the Paramount IPs can intermingle with Warner Brother IPs.
Mhm.
So are we going to see Scooby Doo meet Star Trek? You don't know.
Why not?
Possible. Why not? Yeah.
Millennials love
If
mashups.
it's
They
going to
got
make money, you know.
Ninja Turtles and Godzilla.
Yeah. Will Batman meet the Ninja Turtles? I think he's already done that anyway.
He has. There's
Yeah, but now they
that.
can make a movie, you know, with those two without any
Yay.
trouble. I mean, look about it. What does Paramount own anyway? You know, what are IPs that Paramount owns?
Um,
You
well,
know,
all the well, what they'll
I know
probably
they
do
own
is
Star Trek. That's their most famous, the one I remember. Let's
they'll
see.
kick out James Gunn and have Taylor Sheridan run the DCU.
Oh, apparently they own Mission Impossible,
Mm-hmm.
Transformers,
Mm,
SpongeBob, you
mm,
know, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Paw
mm-hmm,
Patrol, Rugrats, you know, see, and Warner Brothers owns, they also own Nickelodeon. Uh, let's see, they own anything that was by CBS, you know, and of course with Warner Brothers, they own Harry Potter. So it's, you know, all sorts of stuff could happen now. You
mm-hmm.
know, it would just, it boggles the imagination. But what does that mean with comics? You know, let's see.
Well, here's the other thing. They spent all that money, so they're going to want to get the most out of what they now own, which
Warner
means,
Brothers has IPs they still haven't used. Like what? What are IPs they haven't used?
well, anyway, the thing is that they've spent all this money, so they're probably going to be less likely to try anything new because they want to get the most out of what they already own.
Yeah,
So it's
says
going to be endless mashups of like,
it would
oh,
be it would be crazy if the Turtles became a DC comic. Well, that's not unusual. I mean,
mhm,
they do own DC Comics now, which begs the question: what do you think they're going to do with DC Comics? Do you think they're going to look at it and say, you know, well, we don't want to publish anymore. You know, we don't want to bother with the publishing end of it. We'll license out, you know, the characters to other publishers or the other, you know, things like that. Or do you think they'll keep it and say, oh, we'll just consider it part of the marketing budget? Which begs the question: then what really is DC Comics anymore? If they're treating it like a marketing venture, more like for promotion than actual creative artistic endeavor, then what's really the point of DC Comics existing anyway? You know, it really makes no sense. Now, they could say very easily, hey, we got 100 years worth of material. You know, we just won't bother doing any new material. We'll just keep old material in print, you know, and just live off of that. It'd be a
mm.
lot cheaper. We don't have to worry about staff and health insurance, you know, and things like that. You know, we just reprint. We just have one guy, you know, in charge of reprinting old DC material from the last 100 years. I mean, think about it. You know, it would be very easy to do
So
because
one of the Marvel editors said something to that effect. They were they were talking about like when they were starting to do that Marvel initiative with the all new, all young characters and all that, and some of the older fans were complaining about like, oh, you're pushing out all the characters we like and everything. And one of the editors says, well, there's like 80 years of Marvel history, so you can go back into that, you know, and anytime you want and re-enjoy the stories that you liked back then. And people kind of like consider that like as a kiss off or a brush off, but honestly, that was he wasn't wrong, you know. And and this is sort of a side thought I had recently was that remember how the original MCU crawl, like, before the movie started, they flipped through a comic book?
Mhm.
It was like,
Mhm.
and I thought, "Wow, what," and I think a few of them they tried to it was like the flip through was the comic book that this movie was gonna be from, like Iron Man they flipped through an Iron Man comic for Iron Man and Thor for Thor. Maybe I'm misremembering that, but that's not the important part.
Mhm.
Um, but then they got rid of that, like, right away, and comic deal retailers were saying like, "Well," they were already doing sort of a supervillain thing where they were telling you what they were gonna do long before they actually did it.
Mhm.
So, like, retailers were saying, like, families would go see, like, the MCU movies when they were, in that Avengers era, pre-Endgame when they were awesome, and then
Mhm.
see the movies at the Cineplex in the mall, and then they'd go to the comic shop, and it's like, "Oh, it's Lady Thor and Nazi Captain America, and, or they're pushing Kamala Khan really hard and all this other stuff," and they're like, "Well, that's not what I saw in the movie, so I'm not gonna buy the comics." And
Mhm.
they wondered, like, what I remember you saying, like, "Well, why don't they promote the comics? Why don't they have the comics in the lobbies of the movie theater, and why don't they promote the comics more?" And I started thinking, well, if you go back into that 80 years of comic history, especially when you're talking about characters like Power Man, um, Iron Fist, Shang-Chi, it's like, I would imagine that they don't want the people on the right side of history that didn't grow up with those comics back then to discover those comics now, because they
Mhm.
would just lose their damn minds at how politically incorrect a lot of the stuff from the 70s, 80s, and 90s was. Like, they'll be like, "Oh, look at this," and then
Well, I mean, a good comic story is a good comic story. I don't care what era it's from. The
well,
thing is,
that's our attitude. That's not the people on the right side of history who don't
well,
really even read the
I
comics, but
I agree with you.
get on TikTok.
There's a lot of old comics that would definitely not be, uh, that are not quote unquote politically correct.
Right.
But they were products of the time, and
Sure.
of course, let's face it, most of the writing back then was not exactly, pinnacle of high art because they were aimed at kids. Yeah, what's ironic is that kids back then probably had better, reading
Yeah.
comprehension than people now, adults nowadays.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
kind
No,
of
it's true.
ironic, you
Very
know.
true.
But I mean, I've have you actually read any Golden Age comics?
Well, I'm not talking about just golden age. I'm talking like
No,
60s, 70s,
yeah,
80s.
well, by then comics have sort of matured a little bit more. But if you actually read any Golden Age comics, they're awful. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
they're the
Yeah.
most terrible comics you could possibly read.
We got
But
into, you and I got into that whole public domain thing a few years ago, and I read a shit ton I read like the original Ms. Mask stories and Miss Fury, like a lot of the Cheesecakey Girl ones, Phantom Lady. I read a bunch of those. A lot of the stuff that was in Planet Comics.
mhm.
But, and yeah, some of them not only are they unreadable, the words are misspelled, the punctuation's terrible. They put hyphens, like, at
Yeah, well,
random,
you
making
could
it really hard.
tell you could tell they were pushing these things out on a deadline.
Oh, yeah.
They had to really knock those things out as quickly as
Mhm.
possible. And sometimes it and they knew they were aiming it for kids anyway. Okay,
Right.
so they probably didn't figure, the kids will not know, don't won't know the difference.
Mhm.
And obviously it worked because kids
Sure.
loved them. They
Yeah.
bought it. But then they weren't distracted by things like video games, streaming, things like that. All they had were comics, and books. That's
Well,
it.
if you wanted to see anything
And movies.
fantastical,
And movies, yeah.
right, I mean, if you like, before, well, when we were when we were young, there might have been, like, a comic book store in a mall, and that was it, and the rest of just the world in general was
Well,
kind of.
no, but comics were also available at 7-Elevens and convenience stores and drugstores too, as well. So they were ubiquitous in a lot of places, not just
Okay,
comic stores.
so I started high school in 1980. I was a freshman in high school in 1980. So let's talk about, like, before 1980, when there really wasn't I mean, you and I were kind of lived in suburbia, right? We weren't like big city kids. So, but there was a big city. I mean, I lived near two big cities, but I lived kind of like my neighborhood looked like more like a Spielberg movie than a big city. So if you went to a mall or downtown or whatever, maybe there might have been a single comic store and maybe there might have been a toy store, but like the world wasn't full of fantastical things everywhere you looked. There wasn't like sci-fi was just not something that was found everywhere. If you go to the mall now, I mean, you go to Hot Topic, and it went from being like punk rock clothes to it looks like an anime store now. Like like the whole everything at the entrance of a Hot Topic store is like anime. I remember one time there when Doctor Who was hot, they had a bunch of Doctor Who stuff in there, and I'm like, that's all comic store stuff. And now there's like 6 Asian lifestyle stores in my local mall, which means that it's full of plushies and anime characters, and I'm not saying these are bad things, but it's like w now we live in a world where, like, fantastical, made up cartoon things that were considered childish are everywhere, grocery store, everywhere. But back then, it was just kinda like everything was like, "This is the real world, and you live in it," and then your comic book was your escape, the way you escaped.
Yeah.
But,
Well, we didn't have many avenues of entertainment back then. We had the TV, we had movies, we had comic books, we had books. That was about, and well, of course, you're going to count music. We had LPs, but the as far as visual medium is concerned, those were that was it.
yeah.
Now we have video games, we have streaming, we have DVDs and all that kind of stuff, and all sorts of alternatives. And that's
Mhm,
it gives you more choices than ever, and that's also sort of democratizing entertainment.
mhm,
Now the technology. I mean, back then, it was very expensive when we did that Warrior Nun pilot. Back in 1995, that thing cost like $30,000. That
yeah,
right now would be nearly $100,000 today if we had
mhm,
produced it today. The thing was, it was all done by hand. Everything was done by hand, so it was not a cheap endeavor. Now
mhm,
people can do animation and things like that, very, very, very low because of the advent of AI and all that kind of stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still uh, it still cannot match the imagination and craftsmanship of a human hand, you
mhm,
know. And so you're basically getting an. It's like similar if you were getting a handcrafted, automobile, built
yeah,
from the ground up. It was like a one of a kind vehicle. It was a thing of beauty as compared to buying a Ford Fiesta.
yeah,
It's there's a big difference. You're paying for the craftsmanship, and the love and care that went into building that unique item as opposed to just a mass produced item you
right.
know
But again,
uh,
if you're just going from point A to point B, you don't necessarily need a piece of artwork to drive around in.
sci-fi fans not considered mainstream pumping. Yeah, just well, I mean, I'd have to
Yeah,
disagree with that because the pulps back then were considered mainstream. There were a lot of science fiction, fantasy pulps in the 30s, and even in the 20s we had Buck Rogers and things like that. So
mhm,
science fiction is a fairly new genre, to be honest. It
mhm,
really didn't come to being. And then you can go as far back as Jules Verne, who's like the father of science fiction,
right,
back in the 1870s, and so it goes back, and fantasy's been around forever, with things like the Knights of the Round Table and things like that.
mhm,
So I would have to say it's becoming it's always been sort of main quote unquote mainstream. People did buy them and read them, it just wasn't considered what highbrow. Okay, it wasn't
yeah,
considered like real literature.
right,
It was
okay,
disposable entertainment.
right,
And that's how people look at it, or special order subscriber. Yeah. Well, I
yeah,
mean, the thing is that what used to be disposable entertainment has become mainstream,
mhm,
and that's the thing. That's what I mean. But I think that's what I mean by mainstream is now being accepted by a vast majority of the populace. When back then it was considered very niche, very geeky, very unserious,
Yeah. But I'm also saying, like, yeah, you go to the newsstand and maybe there'd be like a place where the sci-fi pulp magazines were, but like you go out into the world and there wasn't like posters of these characters and merch for these characters everywhere and clothes based on these characters everywhere. It was just kind of like, maybe if you go to the toy store for children, there'd be like a doll or something like that. But it wasn't like, if you go to any mall right now, it's like cartoon characters and pop culture characters are like literally everywhere. And
Well, I would probably say that things like science fiction back in the day. I mean, we
yeah,
talk like the 30s, the 40s, they're still in the realm of impossibility for a lot of mainstream people.
mhm.
That was just stuff that was that couldn't possibly happen. But now, real science has caught up to science fiction.
Oh yeah,
So now it's become sort of everyday and mundane. For the most part. So that's why I think things like superheroes and fantasy that's I think that's why Harry Potter has become so popular because it taps into a world that could never actually exist,
right.
but you want to be part of it,
Hmm.
and that's the thing that is appealing to stories like that. I mean things like uh that's why Wizard of Oz and and Alice in Wonderland, still are popular even to this day. Wizard of Oz more so than Alice, apparently. Uh,
How did you get all into Harry Potter, by the way? Was that Becky's influence?
yeah, it was Becky's influence. Yeah, my wife. Yeah. Let's see. I I personally didn't care much for it. I thought it was just like a kids thing, you
Hmm.
know. If Warner turned Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings into comics, they would compete with them. Well, it depends on how you had it handled. I think there's. I don't hold me on this, but I could swear there was a Harry Potter manga already. You know, it could be a licensing thing. It could be that J.K. Rowling won't allow it.
I've
You
I've
know,
heard that she's never allowed a comic adaptation of that. That's her old school
well,
teacher.
she could if she wanted to. All she would
Yeah,
say is, "Yeah, I wouldn't. Sure, go ahead."
yeah, she's like,
But as
no,
long as she says no, they're not going to make one. DC
right.
compacts of Harry Potter. So yeah, well, I agree
Well,
with you. You
years
know,
ago, Chuck Dixon did a adaptation of The Hobbit, and it was like beautiful painted artwork, and it was very faithful, and it was very text heavy because he was trying to cram everything into it. But uh,
well, here's an interesting conundrum. See,
mhm.
DC compact. Okay, so chances are highly unlikely unless J.K. Rowling needs money, and I highly doubt it. I mean, but let's just say I need money and I want to do a Harry Potter comic. All she wanted to do is say yes. We could do. I'll allow you to do a Harry Potter comic. Now, until that happens, what alternative do you have? Okay, so do what George Lucas did. Okay, he can do Flash Gordon. So what do? He created Star Wars. You can do the
Right.
same thing with things like Harry Potter, or Lord of the Rings. If you can't do a comic book based on those properties, make up your own property and do a better job.
Well, I
Make a
don't know if
better Harry Potter, make a better Lord of the Rings.
I don't know if you knew this, but 50 Shades of Grey started out as Twilight fan fiction.
Yeah, I mean it's
So,
possible to take something that's incredible. I mean, I remember when Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came out, and people did all sorts of, attempts at replicating that success. You
yeah,
know, but the thing about Turtles is that Eastman and Laird were not. They were yeah, let's do this, type
right.
mentality, as opposed to J.K. Rowling, who obviously holds, the property very close to her vest,
Mhm.
and she wants to make sure that only she has total control over it. I'm sure when Eastman and Laird sold the turtle rights, uh, they it the people who own it now can do whatever they want with it, you know,
Mhm.
and they have no say in, or they have very little say in the direction that they go. And I think that I think with J.K. Rowling is that, and I don't know this for a fact, but she may feel like, I want to have total control over my IP, and that's why if you don't think you can ever get a hold of it, and you want to do a comic book, just do your own version of it.
Yeah.
There's no law that says you can't do your own version of it, you
Hmm.
know. And that's the, I mean, that reminds me of that time we did the Diary of a Zombie Kid, thing. It wasn't because it was called Diary of a Zombie Kid. You know why we got a cease and desist?
Because you tried to do like 5 or 6 of them.
No, that wasn't
Oh,
it at all. The Diary of a Wimpy Kid. The reason that they fell on it is because it looked too much like the Diary of a Wimpy Kid
oh,
books. It just
mm,
looked like it. They
yeah.
couldn't really stop us doing Diary of a Zombie Kid, but
Mm,
they were afraid people were going to get confused because we designed the books to look exactly like the Diary of the Wimpy Kid books.
yeah,
That's what they were upset about.
because after
They
Diary of a
didn't
Wimpy,
care about the character. They just
because
cared about the look.
after Diary of a Wimpy Kid came out, there were a lot of Diary of a
Knockoffs.
whatever type thing. Yeah.
So all we had to do was change the look, and we got we got away with it.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, it also affected sales when it no longer people no longer confused. So I could see why they did that. I mean,
Yeah.
I totally understood. So it's just like one of those things. And like I said, George Lucas couldn't get Flash Gordon, so he just did his own thing. He did his own
Mhm.
Flash Gordon, and it became Star Wars. And nobody remembers Flash Gordon,
Hey.
except for the
What's
1980s
that
version.
poster on that wall behind you?
But Flash Gordon was a cultural phenomenon, but never became the hit that Star Wars became.
Oh yeah, no, the
So,
1980 movie was a flop, but
yeah.
it's well beloved.
Mine would be Harry Spotter, a magic sniper. Yeah, go for it. I'd read
There
that.
you go.
Yeah,
That's a
confusion is
magic
good for
bullet.
sales. Well,
It's
it can be until they crack down on you.
well, so we just got in at work 2 books, and it's called K-pop Academy, I think,
Hmm.
and it says right there on the cover for obsessed fans of K-pop Demon Hunters. And then they show these 4 girls with, like, ninja type weapons, but they're just in silhouette on the cover, like, and they're, like, color coded, you know? Um, and so, I mean, because Netflix completely dropped the ball on any kind of K-pop Demon Hunter merchandise or tie-in stuff. There's, like, a little golden book, there's a poster book, and there's a couple of other things coming out, but it's like, if you wanna read further adventures, I don't know how long it's gonna be till the next movie comes out, but it's gonna be too long for the fans, and so, like, and they didn't have any novels ready or comics or manga. I think there is a manga on its way, but,
Well, until they come up with K-pop Demon Hunters Part Two.
yeah, but I mean, even if it only takes 6 months for them to get that out, and it won't, it's gonna be longer
No,
than that.
it'll be like 5 years before it
It's
comes
gonna I
out.
know, but the fans want shit now, and they just did not have that ready, and
Yeah.
by the way, speaking of repackaging something, I've seen sample pages. They're gonna do a Captain Underpants manga, and
Oh boy, I can't wait for that one.
no, dude, it's beautiful. The manga artist that they got to do it, it's amazing, and it's just gonna be like, just get a money printer and just
Yeah. Just like Ben created a war now because he couldn't make a flying nun comic. Yes, I've always wanted to do a flying nun comic. That was always my dream come true.
That's it.
Damn them for not letting me do a flying nun comic.
Damn you, Sally Field.
K-pop Demon should have been a series, not a movie. Well, I sort of disagree with that. I think a movie had a more of an impact. The thing about a series is that it's a huge investment of time. A
Yeah,
movie is one and done.
and the
And I
movie
think
was a tough sell to begin with.
it was, yeah. I mean, to commit to like 10 episodes for Netflix, they probably would have said no. They probably would have said no, it's not worth it. And plus, animation is expensive.
Yeah,
And I don't think they wanted. And plus, the creators of K-pop, probably didn't have enough ideas to stretch it out for 10 episodes. You know, and unless they did it, on the cheap. Yeah, unfortunately, I think that probably would have affected the. I mean, it's not like they haven't done animated series before. They have done that, but
yeah,
they probably just didn't have much faith in Sony is the one who actually produced it. They're the ones who
right.
decided to make it into a movie. And in fact, from my understanding, they had little faith in it at all.
Right.
They just wanted to just, in fact, they had so little faith, they just sold it to Netflix. It
Hmm.
says, here, take it. At least we can make our money back, on it. And who could have thought it would have been a huge phenomenon that it turned out to be? They didn't think it was going to be.
Yeah.
Just like when Star Wars was first made, Fox didn't think it was going to do well at all. The idea was that we'll be lucky we break even, because they thought it
Right.
was all it was going to attract were like the geeks, and it'd be a niche market. They never would have thought it was going. None of them thought it was going to be a huge hit.
Which goes
Even
back to what
George
I was
Lucas
saying.
himself.
Which goes back to what I was saying about, like, if you walk through the world in the '70s before, especially before Star Wars, there wasn't like a lot of fantastical stuff around. So they were like, when he said like, I'd like to keep the merchandising, they're like, yeah, sure. What are you going to do? Sell a couple of, you
Yeah,
know?
before Star Wars came out, the biggest merchandising thing was Planet of the Apes.
Yes, I remember that.
That was the biggest thing, and it only did modestly well. You know,
Right.
but no one
Those
knew at the.
movies weren't for kids either, really. I mean,
Well,
kids.
they did kids movie. I mean, Disney had movies out. You
No, no,
know,
no. That Planet of the Apes was not a children's franchise.
did you know it was rated G when it came out?
Planet of the Apes?
Yep.
A
If you
guy
look
got
at
shot in the neck and then
if you
rated.
look at the original rating of that movie, and I was shocked by that, it was
Really?
rated G. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it would
That,
not be rated G now.
no,
Definitely be PG-13 for sure.
just
You
for
know,
her
but
costume, Nova's costume.
yeah, yeah, it's so huge. They sold empty boxes and still sold out.
Yeah,
Yeah, just like the early birds gift certificate for Star Wars.
yeah.
Yeah, we might well, if you buy the certificate now, we'll send you the toys like 6 months from now. But that's just to show you how popular the movie was. That's the
And
thing.
that's how Gen Xers learn to wait.
Yep.
We
Well,
learned about
now,
waiting and we learned about disappointment.
yeah, well, now with 3D printing, I'm not so sure these days.
Yeah,
Yeah, but like I said, back in the '70s, they were kids' movies. It's just that they were made for kids, you know.
yeah,
And Star Wars was one of those movies that I think they were confused by who it was aimed at.
yeah.
My understanding is that when they made the movie, a lot of the people who worked on the original movie, they thought they were working on a kids' movie.
Hmm.
You know, the Tish was a powerful thing. It sure was.
Hmm.
Originally, Star Wars meant to be an ongoing friend. Was not to. Yes, I totally believe that. In
Hmm.
fact, my understanding was that he did not. If you ever watched the original Star Wars when it first came, there was no Episode 4 thing attached to it. You know,
No, no.
and in fact, he thought it was only going to do modestly well. And Splinter of the Mind's Eye was his attempt to do a low cost sequel, in case the movie didn't perform as expected, you know.
Hmm.
So it's one of those things that it changes once you learn that you've got a huge hit on your hands. So,
Right.
or is I don't know if it was aimed at the college crowd. I think it was more aimed at 13-year-old boys. You
Well,
know,
no, I agree with. So this is something else I thought. A lot of Gen X pop culture that we love was actually boomers doing stuff for other boomers. Like Marvel Comics in the '70s was boom, like when Jim Starlin took over and he was young and Roy Thomason was young and all those guys were young. They were boomers telling stories for themselves, for other boomers, for the college crowd. And if you happen to be 10, 11, 12, 13 and that stuff appealed to you, that's great. As long as the sales stayed fine, they were fine. And, there was nothing else, so it's like if I read a Marvel comic and I didn't completely understand, Jim Starlin or whoever was out of their mind on peyote and doing psychedelic comics, and I didn't completely understand what they were trying to do at the time, I didn't care because it was a comic book and it was cool and there was stuff happening and that I couldn't see out in the regular world. You couldn't even, like, film that stuff at the time. So, that's the only place I could see anything like that. I was down for it, 35 cents, sign me up, you
Mm.
know?
Well, I think we're seeing a definite change in what a generational change in what they consider entertainment. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
if you look at comics, comics actually had their golden age in the 1930s and 40s and early 50s. So
Mm,
assuming you were like of reading age between 6 and 10 years old, by the 1950s you're becoming a teenager. Okay, so you went through the 1950s, and that's where you got all those lurid, comic books and the
the EC stuff.
installation of the EC stuff, right, and horror. The sexualized version of comics. Because they were aimed at teenagers. We were all becoming horny teenagers. And then the Comics Code
But
came
there was
around. If you
uh,
notice, when the Comics Code came around, sales of comics dipped
right.
precipitously. Okay,
Okay,
and
so
then
let me ask you two things then before you go on. So when you're talking about golden age and the gold and silver and all that, are you talking about in terms of quality or in terms of sales? Because like you said before, some of those golden age books are pretty terrible.
in terms of sales and the buyer, okay, the kids who grew up in the golden age were becoming teenagers by the 1950s, and
Mhm.
comic books started to grow with them. Okay, and then when the Comics Code was introduced, the comic sales dropped. Okay,
Right.
and then
But if you
Marvel
look
came along and appealed to a college age crowd, because by that time the kids who were growing up in the 30s and 40s and early 50s were becoming college age students, and Marvel appealed to the college age crowd. And then by the 1970s, they were becoming young adults. And again, comics changed again, through the Bronze Age, where they introduced elements of horror, more mature storytelling, higher quality art, things like that. And by
well,
the
there was
80s,
also what also didn't exist in the 70s. What really didn't exist much in the 60s and did more in the 70s was the advent of the R-rated movie. So they were they had their eye on like
and the
anything.
X-rated movie.
Well, more the R-rated movies. So they were looking at Dirty Harry and Under the Dragon and the blaxploitation movies and all the horror movies and all these R-rated movies. And they were like, well, kids want to get in to see them, but they can't. So why don't we do the same subject matter, but we'll sell it? We can sell that to kids. So you get Power Man and Iron Fist and Werewolf by Night and that sort of thing. So the other question is with the golden age stuff, in some cases, I think they also knew that not very literate servicemen were reading their stuff overseas, which is why you got the real leggy, the golden age characters I was talking about, like the Gale, Gale, whatever from Planet Comics and Phantom Lady and all those all those Jungle Girl comics. So
Was
it's like
also the 60s and the 70s also introduced underground comics for the first time.
right, and those were not, but those weren't even sold where
Yeah,
kids were going to
they
buy
were sold at
comics.
head shops and
Right,
places like that.
right. But with the golden age stuff, it's like, yeah, there was a lot of kids stuff, but there was also a lot of stuff that looked like it was made for adult servicemen who were not like that literate. And
Oh, I
but
wouldn't
the,
say that.
but the story, well, I mean, the stories weren't but the stories were some, for the most part, they were things that kids could read. Like
Yeah, it was
you know,
still under the Comics Code.
yeah. Well, there was no comics
Blaxploitation
code
was a
back
gold
then
mine in the
either.
late
That's why, yeah,
was a gold mine in the 60s and 70s, just like the martial arts films
yeah.
were a gold mine in the 70s. So what happened? What happened to those black exploitation movies and those martial arts movies that were so popular in the 70s? I
Oh, I
guess
can
they
tell you
just
what happened.
burned
No,
themselves out.
no. What happened was the black activists got on there. They got pretty rough towards the end of the run. That it's like once you ran out of the good ideas, you just kind of like went for the lowest common denominator.
Like
And
Blackula,
well, yeah, I mean, not a lot of them were a lot of those were pretty unwatchable too.
Cleopatra Jones. Actually,
That was a good one. No,
I will
fine,
tell
that's a
you,
good one.
uh, Black Gestapo.
Now I have Black Gestapo. I have a
Yeah.
little mini collection of black exploitation movies
Oh
from
yeah, and of course we
the
had
really
those.
good ones with
And
Fred Williamson.
don't forget the Nazi exploitation. Yeah, comics were spin off for newspaper.
Yeah. Oh, the Ilsa, Queen of the
Yes,
Bandits type stuff.
although
Yeah. So anyway, what happened with the black exploitation movies was the black activists got all in their face. and they basically all the actors who were making money and a living off of those things ended up out of work, and then a few of them like popped up now and then, like Pam Grier and um, like I said, Fred Williamson, but it wasn't the same, you know. And
Well, I mean, the thing about it was that all of those movies were created by, black filmmakers. Okay, they were trying. They were trying to. Well, they were trying to uh, give a. They were trying to entertain the audience they were shooting for.
right,
And they knew the audience they were shooting for.
right.
They knew their audience would like this. And they provided that because the the white Hollywood wasn't providing the entertainment, that they
Oh
wanted
yeah,
to see.
that
You
that
know.
part they knew. But there's a famous story where the guy who wrote the novel that Shaft was based on is white, and so
Oh, really?
yes, and so
Shocking.
they were going to give him some kind. I forgot what the award was, but he was going to get an awards, and it was like just I think it was like something like what the equivalent of like a BET style award would have been back in the day. So this
I mean,
white guy they
what do you
showed up
think
and they're like, "Who are
audience?
you?" And he's like, "I'm the guy who wrote Shaft."
What do you think audiences would think of those kind of movies if they watched them now? Like
Uh,
Superfly and Shaft and things like that. You
so
know.
from what I understand, I mean, they're pretty well liked, and they were very influential on like the rap culture and that sort of thing. But there's guys who are like our age who are kind of like, yeah, that was great back then, but it's been like 50 years in some cases, and it's like we never could get past that and do something better or a new version of that or anything. So,
Well, I mean, the same thing could be said about Bruce Lee when he introduced, martial arts films to mainstream audiences. Especially Enter the Dragon, which really, from my understand, that was a huge hit. You know,
sure.
and it really created the demand for martial arts movies. And Retro Day says I prefer the ninja film craze of the late 70s and clear through. Yes,
Well,
definitely.
we could
Now,
talk. That could
you
be
may
like
not
a 3 hour
you may not
stream in
know
and of
this.
itself.
You may not know
But
this,
like
but ninjas were
the
introduced
thing
in
with
James Bond.
the to me that's apples and oranges because like the
Welcome, Genuine Comics.
the um, black people black people in the 70s and 80s were still very much a minority and still very much meant to feel like a minority, and so these movies were like, hey, I'm seeing myself on screen doing awesome stuff, but like with Asians have a whole country where they can make and a whole film industry unto themselves, which is where Bruce Lee went to be a star and then came back and made an
Well,
American movie.
that you see, that's the thing. The thing about independent cinema back then, just like independent comics back then,
Sure.
they had to be made on their own dime, and they were
Yeah.
catering to an audience that wasn't being served.
Right.
Which brings up to how to succeed in comics.
Wow, it only took us an hour and 17 minutes.
So one of the things those things shows us an example of
Mhm.
is niche marketing.
Right.
Okay, creating a demand for something that no one else is doing at the time.
Right.
I mean, the thing about it is that uh, finally, yeah. So the
We're
the thing
old and
about
have back in
so
my day, I had an onion on my belt, and that
well,
was fashion at the time.
using the example of independent film and and independent comics is that the if you want to find some success in independent comic books, create comics that create comics for a market that's not being served.
Mhm.
Okay, Marvel and DC is superheroes. I
Right.
can't think of anything else they do other than superheroes.
Right.
Okay, and they're very good at it. Going
Mhm.
head to head to them, to me, is pointless. I mean, you
Mhm.
can if you have a different take on superheroes. Like for instance, when with AP, I treat our superheroes more like a throwback to earlier superhero stories, but with a manga spin on it.
Mhm.
I add that little extra different ingredient to make it stand out, as opposed to just a traditional superhero comic,
Mhm.
and I always treat them as more like a comedy more than like a superhero
Right.
comic. Very few, very little pathos, very little, you know, I don't treat it as a soap opera. I treat it more like a one and done type stories, like old comic book stories used to be back then. Where
Mhm.
you didn't have to buy 10 different issues to follow one storyline, or where there's an event where you had to buy, 17 different titles to follow the story. Now, I focus that you can read a typical uh, Antarctic Press Tomorrow Girl story within one or two issues, and it's self-contained. You
Mhm.
don't have to read a large history of Tomorrow Girl to dive right into it, because
Mhm.
Stan Lee once said, every comic is somebody's first comic.
Okay.
And you can't,
So
if
was
you
that Stan Lee or was that Jim Shooter?
was that Jim Shooter? I swear to God, I thought it was
I,
Stan Lee.
somebody said that once, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know if that's true." I heard it was Jim Shooter, but let's just say somebody at Marvel who was really smart said
Yeah,
that.
every comic is somebody's first comic.
Okay.
So that is a philosophy that a lot of comic book creators should take to heart. You know,
Yes.
uh, if you have a grand story to tell, then that's fine. You can do that, but be prepared, to commit to it. Okay. The good thing about episodic comics is that, you can end it at any time. It's one and done. And it also, I think, is better for world building. Because you can build it a little bit at a time. It's hard to introduce an entire universe of characters when nobody knows nothing about your characters. Okay.
Okay.
You build it slowly from the ground up, and add to it so that you have a solid foundation.
Retro Days. I'm in my closet and I don't have anything in here that's I would call a treasure. Well, I have treasures, but they're not on any kind of display. It's just my T-shirts, my computer stuff, and things I'm using for reference at the computer, and my guinea pig mask.
All right.
So
Well, getting back to niche marketing.
yeah.
Okay. Is
Well,
that
okay. Let me go on the back of what you just said, Ben.
okay?
I totally agree with you, and like I'm not. I don't want to diss anybody, and I'm not talking about anybody in particular. And my opinions do not reflect yours or Antarctic Press's, except for when you say you agree. But um, like I used to look at Kablam a lot, and I would just go through, and there'd be like comic after comic of some new superhero team, and they take it very seriously. And instead of like, how many people were on the Super Friends? Like five. There was a Fantastic Four, five Super Friends, give or take. But then there'd be like a dozen new characters, like flying at the reader, and then you try to read the comic, and it's like the first issue, like there's so many new just hero characters that you can't even keep track of who they are, what their powers are, or they'll put like a little caption that says who they are, but there's no depth to who they are or what they do in the story. It's just it's a mess, and you feel like you're reading issue 300 of an ongoing series, but this is like the first issue of their new universe that you could tell they've been burning to tell this story for a long time.
Yeah, it's probably
Um,
something they created in high school, and they probably want to bring it to life
yeah,
for.
I mean, and
Yeah.
it's the same old. I mean, and I don't. God bless them. I mean, it's the same old story. We've all been there. I know you brought a lot of the characters you created in high school to into high school and whatnot. And
Yes, but I don't. What I okay. So you bring up a good point. Okay, so uh, Jose, yeah, I guess his name Jose. One offset miniseries was Dark Horse business model that worked well. Well, it did and it didn't. I know that Dark Horse made an attempt to do a super universe. I don't remember what it was called, but remember they did things like Ghost and um, X and all those other things. Remember
oh yeah,
those?
when they're
Yeah,
doing their Dark Horse universe thing.
right.
Yeah,
Now the I'm not sure, but weren't those creator owned? I mean, I don't know. Dark Horse
no,
owns them. No,
no.
they
The
weren't.
the whole point of it was so they could make movies and it would be owned by Dark Horse.
Okay. Well, they where are they? they're no longer around, are they?
They tried to bring back one or two of those, but yeah. Well, but see, even that one, they gave everything breathing room. It's like they did a run of barbed wire, and there wasn't. I don't remember there if there was a crossover. I don't remember it.
Mhm.
And then X had X's own series, and Ghost had her own series. And I think there was some point when they brought them all together, or may have had the more I think of it, I think there might have been a couple of crossovers, but it wasn't like the main thing was like, this is the IP we're trying to introduce, and I think whatever that harbor was that barbed wire took in, I think that was supposed to be the central point that connected all of them. But yeah, I mean, the
Well,
barbed
see,
wire movie came out and didn't do well, and then it was kind of like, yep, that's it.
well, the fundamental mistake. Okay, this is something that all small publishers should take into account. Is that the fundamental mistake of trying to create a quote unquote superhero universe from the ground up?
Hmm.
Okay, is that you can only spend so much resources on trying to develop, the entire series. Okay,
Hmm.
we're introducing that many characters. It's hard to get invested, in any one character when you have so many that you're trying to develop. And that to me is a fundamental mistake when it comes to creating a quote unquote superhero universe.
Hmm.
If you're going to create a superhero universe of any type,
Hmm.
okay, unless you have great experience like Jim Shooter when he did Valiant. When he did Valiant, I think the very first Valiant comic was Harbinger. Am I correct? And
Uh,
but he had a very
Kind of
solid
doesn't matter, but the important thing is Jim Shooter was very smart
right.
the way he did that.
Jim Shooter had a lot of experience creating superhero universes. He did the new
Mhm,
universe, didn't
mhm,
take, but it was a valiant attempt.
yeah,
But he had resources behind him. Okay,
mhm,
that's the big thing. Now you are a creator or publisher with very few resources. You have to decide, very you have to decide what is the direction your company is going to take. What is its business model going to be, and what is your mission statement? See, I
right.
think the Invincible universe was the last successful attempt at the super universe, the Invincible universe. Oh yes, yeah. Isn't that Kirkman? Am I correct? Is that
Yeah,
Robert Kirk? Oh yeah, Robert. Well, Robert Kirkman is a seasoned writer. He knows what he wants, and even then, he didn't create a superhero universe from the ground up. He introduced one character and built the universe around that one character. Okay,
well,
he didn't
plus,
have the universe first and then introduced the character. He had that one character and built around that one character, because
right.
that was his focus, and that should be the focus of really any creator is to uh, stick with one character and build up on that one character, you know.
So here's the thing too is a lot of the Kablam characters. I'm just going to call it like the Kablam universe, even though it's
See,
all like,
Retro Days gets it. Begin with
yeah.
one hero, build them up, build the world, then they occasionally do side characters. Yes, that's the way to do it.
Here's the thing though, I going back to like your initial thesis is I think Marvel and DC to go to head to head with Marvel and DC with superheroes is is dumb. Uh, Especially now post MCU, everybody knows like especially for normies, there's like so much room in their life for so many superheroes, and then they don't really need or want more. And Marvel's already done it successfully with their movies. DC, it's a mixed bag. They probably had more success with their animation and kids shows and cartoons, but everybody knows those characters. Comics fans like them, normies like them, and I don't think there's a need for more superheroes. And I know it breaks people's heart to hear like I know people are hearing like and they don't want your superheroes, but it's like the Kablam stuff, it's like you could tell that this is this guy's version of character XYZ. And then the Kirkman stuff, things like the Kirkman stuff, The Boys, Watchmen, that's taking all the tropes that everybody knows and inverting them. So there's like two things going on. It's like the regular superheroes, which everybody knows, and now everybody knows the tropes, not so much from the comics themselves, but from the movies and TV shows. And then there's the other version of the inverted ones where it's like, okay, I've seen the Watchmen movie or the Watchmen TV show,
Well,
Invincible,
I
whatever.
okay. I agree with you. You know, in principle. You know, hold on. Let me see what this comment is say. Jim Shooter's Defiant was crushed in part by the costs related to Marvel lawsuit that Defiant won. And yes, I mean Jim Shooter had a lot of bad luck on that. So getting back to that, I agree and disagree with some what you said. Okay, so for instance, you mentioned that introducing a superhero universe is kind of old hat. I mean, it is, but it's just how you present. Like you said, what Kirkman did in and some of the other creators, they went ultra violent. Okay,
Right.
they took superhero characters and decided to go into a very violent direction, just like and that's the basis of their universe, and that's fine. Okay, if there's a market for them, that's fine. But I've learned that that can only be sustained for so long. Okay,
Mhm.
people get tired of violence. Okay, if all your heroes are about violence, and how much blood and how much killing you can do, in a superhero comic, sooner or later you get desensitized to that whole story, and it becomes old hat. You know,
Right.
I've decided to take the opposite approach. I've decided to, instead of doing super violent superhero comics, I've gone back to the weird and off the cuff storytelling, the classic superhero stories where anything can happen,
Mhm.
and where the characters are likable and that they're you would be willing to hang around with, who actually believe in what they're doing, that they don't have to resort to mass casualties, and property damage in order to uh, be superheroes, because as the name implies, they're supposed to be heroes. And I think a lot of writers have forgotten what it is to me. What they're writing are not superheroes anymore. They're just like mega powered beings. Okay.
Right. But
And
what plus those tropes have been inverted so many times. Go
mhm.
ahead and put yeah, and want me to read it?
Go ahead.
I think it would actually be more novel these days to introduce a series that doesn't try to deconstruct the hero, show extreme violence, and make the world feel awful.
Exactly.
Right. So
There are
that
not that many of them out there, to be
well,
honest.
I mean, there's this whole again, because we like action and adventure and fighting and everything, it's not on our radar. But there's this whole genre of cozy fiction. There's like cozy mysteries, which are about knitting and cooking and stuff. There's cozy, there's a whole genre called cozy fantasy, and it's literally like like a little sitcom adventure in Elfland or something like that. There's a little hollow in the forest and little magical creatures that live in there, and they go through their lives, and they have very low stakes Hallmark Channel kind of stories, but people find it charming and amusing, and they love the characters and want to see them work through their little daily problems.
Mhm.
And there's no fighting or killing or inverting tropes in that. So
Well, okay. I mean, I'm not saying there isn't a demand for that. Okay. See here, My Hero Academia success. I do enormous heavy access to new superhero. Well, that and that the character is likable. You're starting from the beginning, and you're following his journey, as he becomes a superhero. And I think that's what's missing in a lot of modern day superhero comics. You
well,
know, we.
also, My Hero Academia is the first time in a big like I've said before, like anything coming out of Viz or Yen or one of those big manga publishers, um, they've got an unfair advantage because the work's already been paid for and successful in Asia, and they've got a budget to really give it a great push here in America, and they've got a huge platform from years of putting out great stuff. So My Hero Academia, when it came out, was like the first big explosion of a superhero, American style superhero, um, brought back to us and shown to us in a manga style.
Well, I mean that's not necessarily true. I think One Punch Man actually came out before that.
Well, this is like superhero with the
Well, if you're talking
costumes and
about like a classic American superhero, yes, I would.
yes,
This is this is essentially an American superhero done with a manga sensibility.
right,
Okay, and that's what makes it kind of unusual. Now, there've been superheroes in Japanese manga. Don't get me wrong. We got Kamen Rider. We have the Super Sentai. Those are superheroes.
but
Okay, but
those
those were
are very
Japanese.
yes,
There were
they're much
Japanese
more
spins.
Japanese flavored.
Cyborg 009 was a group of international superheroes, okay, way before X-Men came along.
Right,
Okay, so I would say that they were the first diverse group of superheroes, ever in comics.
right.
Because before
The
then,
Japanese, but those were very Japanese flavored. My
right,
Hero Academia is like they are aggressively making it like an American superhero.
right, because there's no secret that the guy who created it was a fan of American comics, and
Right,
I knew from as far back as the 80s that they were Japanese fans of American comics because I was part of I wasn't part, but I have a friend who was part of a fan circle who idolized American superhero comics.
was
They
that
did
the Mighty Bombers
fanzines.
guy?
Hmm?
Was that the Mighty Bombers guy?
No, it was him. Yes, he was part of that circle. You
Hmm.
know, but Eugene. The thing was is that um, they I did that comic Justice, which was a collection of Japanese fanzines that talked about American superheroes. That was done in 1994.
Hmm.
Way before things like My Hero Academia came out or any other things like that. They were Japanese fans of American superheroes. You
Right,
know, and that inspired me to do superheroes based on manga.
right.
That
So, which goes back to like before we like a couple of weeks ago, I think we said, the when they did the Japanese Spider-Man and when they did the Japanese Batman manga and brought them to the States, it was kind of like people were curious and maybe it did okay for the curious fans, but it didn't really take off. Like suddenly we have to do like a lot more of this. Although I think isn't there like a Japanese Batman done by a Japanese creator
yes,
now that's like
back in
really
back in the 60s there was a
no, no,
Japanese.
no, no, no. I mean like now
Oh, well,
there's like this one of the
I wouldn't be
multiverse
surprised.
Batmans is
I wouldn't be
it's pretty
surprised.
badass looking, and I think it's a big deal. But again, it's not like it's not like it didn't take off the way My Hero Academia did. So when we try to go to a foreign country and say like, oh, here's our American version of this thing you guys do, it doesn't always take off very well, and it doesn't really take off well here unless it's My Hero Academia. And My Hero Academia's um, timing was really good because Marvel was kind of on the descent with their all new Ms. Marvel
Yeah.
and those characters were not taken.
Rachel Rachel Day says Archie with powers. Well, Archie was a superhero. He Captain Pureheart, if I recall. So he has been a superhero in the past. Archie
Oh,
just worked for some.
I think they're talking about the cozy like a cozy line of comics. And you
Uh,
guys are right. If you took Riverdale and put it in a forest setting and had all the characters as elves and wizards and Tolkien type characters, that's what cozy fiction is like.
Archie just worked for some weird reason. Well, it's because Archie's just sort of like a everyman type of
Right.
character. And plus, a lot of people don't know this, but Archie took direct inspiration from those Andy Hardy movies
Oh
back in the
yeah, yeah.
30s. You know,
Boy, are we old.
I think you're thinking of the animated movie Ninja Batman. It was unique. Well,
Yeah,
yes, I mean, you're when you're talking about back in the day, okay,
mhm,
things were a lot different back then. Now
right.
it's we're intermingling. Since corporations now own a lot of these IPs, they can intermingle with other big corporations, with their own IPs, and they have the money to do that. I'm talking about small publishers who don't have those kind of resources.
Well, let's go back to your original.
Archie is a slice of. Oh, I don't know about that.
No, no. Well, actually, let's go on the back of that. This is, and let's take it back to the thing you were saying at the beginning about like, uh, uh,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
the last 20 minutes of discussion has been me saying, I don't think you need if I don't think the world needs another superhero book from an independent publisher per se, but think
Well,
of think of all the things that still last that were unlike anything else at the time. Slice of Life comic, American Splendor,
Strangers in Paradise.
Ninja High School,
Mhm.
Reed Fleming, World's Toughest
I
Milkman.
wouldn't say Ninja High School is slice of life.
No, no, no. I'm not talking about Slice of Life. I mean, like at the time it came out, it was unlike anything else.
Yes, I
Like
will agree with that.
Concrete was unlike anything else. Strangers in Paradise was unlike anything else.
Mhm.
Reed Fleming, World's Toughest Milkman. Flaming Carrot was like unlike anything else. And it's like a lot of these, sadly, even though these were like some of these were really big back in the day, and sadly,
Love and Rockets.
Love and Rocket was like, and that would be a tough sell even now. You know,
Mhm.
it's so there's the ones that really made an impact, at least at the time that they came out, and when the original creators were doing it, those were completely off the rails, and I think that's what independent publishing at its best was, and even to this day, you'd have a hard time finding anything like that anywhere else, for better or for worse.
Mhm.
But
Say, okay, Joe says, I think independent publishing is both harder in some ways and easier in others. Well, that's always been the way. Yeah.
yeah,
Let's get into that interesting statement. Okay, yes, independent comics extremely hard, very little chance of success, to be honest. And these games yeah, I mean, okay, so let's get back to yes, it's easier in some ways, harder in others. It's the hardest thing about independent comics is just making money. Okay, that will always be the hardest thing about independent comics. First of all, it's not a large market. Okay,
mhm,
the potential is there, to make a and people have shown it can be done. There have been campaigns on Kickstarter and Indiegogo that have not easily, but have gotten six figures, if not more. Okay, Eric July with his Rippleverse, his first issue did $3 million. I mean, that's impressive no matter how you slice it. And he's an independent comic book publisher.
mhm.
Whether that's the model to the trouble is finding the model that works for you. Okay, and finding the IP that will give you that success, and how to get enough people to be aware of it to want to buy it. You know,
Okay, so that's the even harder part is he had a huge audience just from YouTube and being
yes,
online.
correct,
And
he did.
so yeah,
But he
yeah,
earned that. He earned that. He built up that audience. So when it was time for him to do it, I mean, I think he was on live for at least 5 or 6 years before he decided to do his own comic books.
mhm,
And so he built his audience, so they were ready for him when
mhm,
he decided to debut. Now, he's not doing the kind of numbers of his debut issues, but my appearance is that it allowed him to blast off and have the resources to continue publishing and doing modestly well.
mhm.
He's doing very successfully. Ethan Van Sciver with the Cyberfrog, when he did his book, he made $1 million. No independent comic book on crowdfunding had ever done that kind of money.
Right.
Even the Jawbreakers, Richard C. Myers, when he made over $100,000, that made people sit up and take notice.
Yeah.
Because at that
But
time it was a record breaker. So you
but there were
can.
there were two things working behind the scenes on those. One
Oh
was
yes,
ones that
they
they
were
were on
extenuating
YouTube.
circumstances. Yes, I
Right,
agree.
right.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, hey, I want to make a story about uh it's called Walking Dead, and it's going to be about zombies, and it's going to be like a zombie soap opera, and then people said, shut up and take my money just based on the pitch
No,
and
that's
me
not
being in
true. That's
Broadway.
not true.
That's
When
not how
when
it happened.
Walking Dead first came out, nobody gave a shit about it.
Right.
Okay. In fact, the reason why the first issues were so much is because the print roll was so low.
Right.
I think they only, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is they only printed like 5,000 copies, which
Yeah.
is in image numbers is pathetic.
Right.
Okay,
Because it was
you
black
know,
and white. There were no
black and white
superheroes, and
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 zombies at
zombies
the
weren't
time.
hot.
And
Yeah.
this is from Kirkman's own words. He said the editor at the time says zombies don't sell. Okay,
Zombies are dead.
just I'm pretty sure George Lucas heard the same thing, saying science fiction doesn't sell. You
Sure.
see, that is to me the perfect warning, perfect sign to go ahead and do it. Okay,
Right.
if someone says it doesn't sell, then you should do
Clint
it.
Eastwood made Unforgiven when they told him westerns were dead.
Yeah.
Look what happened.
Yeah. If
So
you believe in your product, people will find it. So
right.
it took a while for Walking Dead to finally, take up because the writing and the art was so good and people loved the story.
Well,
And that's
if I told you what Love and Rockets was about and showed you a couple of pages of artwork, would you have ever thought that would have taken off?
well the thing about Love and Rockets is that it's not a singular narrative.
Right.
It's an anthology basically,
Right.
but if you show me the right story, I probably would say, yeah, this is pretty good. I would
Well,
totally.
you guys didn't even want Strangers in Paradise at first, right? It was Herb that kicked that through, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
So
her was the advocate of that. I didn't want to publish it, you
yeah,
know.
because it was a soap opera. Who knew that a soap opera would work in a comic book?
Well, I didn't at first want to publish it, but Terry Moore was a great guy. He was a
Yeah.
great guy. He did stuff. He would before he became well known. He was the go to guy. He was willing to do anything we asked him to do.
Hmm.
He did a lot of furry stuff. He did some furry stuff. He even did the Ninja High School stuff for the swimsuit issue.
Oh.
So he was willing to do anything. But
Mhm.
once his Strangers in Paradise became big, he decided to go on his own, and which we didn't have a problem with.
Mhm.
We wished him a lot of success. But it just, it just goes to show you that sometimes you were the means to an end.
Right.
You know, it just means they're waiting for it to be done right. You know.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's just luck, waiting for the zeitgeist to change.
Hmm.
So,
Well, that's the thing. Okay, that's another thing that needs to be brought up is that uh, if you want to find success in independent publishing, you have to be willing to work for it. Okay, I know that's. I'm probably sure you've heard this a million times. Is that absence? It is that out of sight, out of mind. Okay, if
mhm.
you don't put out a book on a consistent and constant basis, you will be quickly forgotten.
Mhm.
And that's the thing is that if you notice most books, most comics that have found even a modicum of success, had to produce books on a regular basis, in order to maintain visibility with the audience. No one wants to wait, you know, 3 or 4 years for your next comic to come out. Okay.
Mhm.
The one of the major successes, and I knew this from the very beginning, is that Antarctic Press had to have something on the shelf. My goal was to get uh, a AP comic on the shelf, at least one every week.
Mm.
Okay, at least one AP comic every week. Back when before the Diamond debacle, we were doing that. We were putting out
Yeah.
a comic book every week, on the shelves, and that's why I did so many anthologies. Because my goal was that we had 4 anthologies, 5 or 6. I mean, 5 or 6 anthologies going at once, and I knew that as long as I kept filling the books with material, at least one of those books would come out every week. You know,
Mhm.
whether it be Planet Comics, Horror Comics, Exciting Comics, Furlough, Manga Z, Planet Comics. That was the goal. So if you're a publisher, you have to think about that in terms of the material you're wanting to put out. You know.
Right. But on the other hand, Bone came out on a pretty irregular, but some of those did come out on a pretty irregular basis, and
Yes, but that's an
absence did make
exception.
it a little
Even
harder.
Bone, even Jeff Smith realized he had to keep putting books out on a regular basis, whether or not it was quarterly or bi-monthly or even bi-yearly. He was putting them out.
Yeah.
Okay. Plus, by that time he had a good reputation. Okay,
Mhm.
so people were willing to wait for his work, because they loved his work. And if you get to the point where people I mean, but even Jeff Smith had to start somewhere, and he took a big chance publishing Bone on his own. He
Mhm.
didn't know whether or not, and at first his books didn't sell. Yeah,
No,
at
it
first his
was
books didn't sell.
it took like again, it took like boomers like Peter David, like Bone bore a vague resemblance to Pogo, and it's like the boomers who remembered Pogo were all like, "Oh, this comic is." Again, it was like, who knew that something like that would take off? But they, you kind
Well,
of
he didn't
piggybacked
have a
on.
lot of competition. Let's just say.
Yeah, I mean, people remember when they used to just dismiss them as Bigfoot comics, because the characters had big feet.
Joe says, I remember AP's publishing requirements included at least 12 completed issues for publishing began on a series. I
Wow.
I don't remember that. I maybe my memory is gone, but I remember our rule was that the first arc had to be completed. Basically, if it was if a regular series, we had to have a minimum, I think, of at least the first arc completed. You know,
Yeah.
uh, what if so it took 6 issues for the arc to be completed. We wanted the first 6 issues. If we only took 2 issues, we wanted the first 2 issues. So it was really up to the creator how many issues. Now I'm not going to dispute Joe. It's possible that her or I don't remember ever doing that edict myself, but if her demanded that I guess it's possible that he required it. But um, we did a lot of miniseries that were less than 12 issues for sure.
Herb
It's
was
just
a taskmaster, man.
yeah. There's a lot, but smart strategy. Yeah, you know. Zaid Comics. Hey y'all. Hey, welcome Zaid. Welcome to the discussion. Okay. So that's one of the things you can do as a small publisher. Now another thing you can do is manage your money. Okay. So often I see this from publishers. They'll have a hit on their hands, one hit. They'll make a lot of money. AP was last on my submission list because it needed to be complete. But okay, there's a reason why we do that. Okay, I will explain. I will explain to Retro Days why we did that. Okay, back in the day, we would accept series that were not completed, based on what we got, because we needed stuff to come out with, and we're a publisher and we want material. But it became an issue once Diamond instituted a late policy. Okay, before, back in the 80s and early 90s, Diamond was pretty lax, in accepting late books. But you know what? Who screwed it up for all of us is Image Comics. They screwed
Oh,
it up for
really?
all of us. Oh yeah. Okay, they were soliciting comics and not coming out with them for months on end.
Mm.
Okay, and that screwed everything up. Okay, so Diamond instituted a late policy that if you didn't get your books out, you were going to get hit with a huge fine. They would cancel your book, and you'd have to resolicit all over again.
Oh,
Okay,
wow.
and not only that, you had to prove the book was finished before you could solicit it. So we
So
had to
also,
change that too. We had to, in order for us to avoid, those onerous penalties, we had to make sure the book was in our hands and ready to go before we would solicit it. So don't blame us. It was Diamond's. It was Image Comics. It was all
well,
their fault.
so I'm as well. I did what my share, but like part of the reason I don't have more comics under my belt is the artist would just flame out before the thing ended. So Chesty Sanchez, Zetraman 1, Zetraman 2, they all like the last couple of issues took forever to get out, and the art was of dubious quality in some cases. So anyway,
So I submitted my series to AP, and I'm waiting to hear if it's worth being printed. I plan to send. Well, Lunchbox Comics, if I have it, yes, I do have it. We are looking it over. I will be honest, it's kind of a little out there, so it's hard for us to. We have to take into account the sellability of a series, so we have to look into whether or not. Now, you do have the advantage of it is completed, so it is very much a big, huge advantage, to you, and it's just a matter of whether or not we think how well it'll do. Because right now, we have to be very careful on the kind of series we publish because we have to pay a listing fee through Massive, and that is quite a bit of hit off the top, and therefore we have to be we have to think carefully whether or not a book will actually sell just to cover that listing fee. That doesn't include editorial and printing and shipping, and plus whatever royalty, Okay, let's see. Rob Liefeld legacy. Go, Rob. Go. Yes. Well, but to be fair, he wasn't the only one. So,
You know who else was late all the time? DC. Well, I don't know if you remember the.
oh, yeah. Camelot 3000. Do you remember that?
It was like a year, right? Wasn't
Yeah.
wasn't the last issue of Watchmen? Didn't that take like almost a year to get out too?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, DC was notorious for being late.
And B for Vendetta was even worse because it was serialized in a British magazine called Warrior first, and then they
Uh,
brought it over. DC brought it over, colorized it, and then Warrior was canceled before the last installments of V for Vendetta came out. So we thought we would never see how that thing ended, and then it's like, oh boy, DC's got it. And the artist had changed his art style, and it was so long since the first part came out. The artist had to like revise his art style back to the way it was when he was doing V for Vendetta, and so finally we got to see what the big finale was going to be. So anyway, go ahead.
all right. He says, I am most excited about submitting to AP, though, simply because I feel comfortable knowing everything was done. Yes, it is a huge advantage. That's another thing, is that if you're going to submit to AP, it is to your advantage to have it complete. Now, like I said last time, is that um, we usually don't accept anything that's not completed. Um, my advice to anybody who wants to submit is to do a crowdfunder first, make your money that way, and then submit the work to us. This way, at least you'll have recovered some monetary recompense, on your work, and that anything you submit to us would just be just gravy, pure gravy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
think the
fair.
last couple of I think Cryptid and Saint Sophia looked like they were crowdfunded before.
The next book will be a lot more marketable. Okay, so here's this is an interesting statement. Okay, so what is marketable? Okay, now there's one thing, if you're going to create a comic because you think there's a market for it. Okay, it's another thing to create a comic because you believe in it. Okay, those are not mutually exclusive. Okay, you can do both. You can have something you believe in and is marketable. Okay, but you can't really do a marketable book that you don't believe in. Okay, because if you simply just want to create a comic to take advantage, of a trend or something that's uh, you know that people will buy just based on the title or something like that. I mean, Solson Comics was notorious for that.
Oh
Okay,
man.
if you remember back in the 80s, there was a lot of fly-by-night companies that all they did was marketable comics in the hopes they could cash in on a trend or a craze.
Mhm.
And those are a recipe for disaster. You may do okay, assuming the trend is still viable, because comics are not easy to produce. They take several months. Even if you could put out a comic in 1 month, it still takes like 3 or 4 months for that to be solicited, printed, shipped, and getting into the comic store. So 6 months may pass before the book's out on the stands, and by that time, that trend or craze or whatever may already be over and forgotten. So I wouldn't rely on doing a comic just for marketability. I would do a comic book based on what you are happy with, what you believe in, that you'd be willing to work on for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line. And that's my advice to you if you want to produce comic books. Now, there's nothing wrong with taking advantage of marketable comics if you want to make a quick buck. I don't see any, it's just that it doesn't last. There's no long-term viability in that. See, CC was funded by me alone. Oh,
Retro, are you Cryptid Core? Retro Days. Are you the guy who did Cryptid Core?
Passion Pro. I think so.
We'll see.
what would be the investment low for AP to launch a American subscription version of Webtoons? Create a pipeline. Well, we do have an app, the AP app, the Honor Press app is, then we do put our back issues on there. So in a way, that's sort of our Webtoons for the time being. We don't put any new material there, though we do update it with any new material that we do have. So yeah, I would suggest checking it out. There's a lot of good. I think we have over nearly 1,000 titles on there to check out. So yeah, go by and check it out. It's the Anarctic Press app. Should be on Apple Store, and I think it's on what's the other one? Google.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. I did a 17-page one shot of the idea, and it did really well. So I'm spending. Good for you, Lunchbox Comics. That's great. See, that's the thing. That's another important thing. Is you have to keep at it. It may be, it may be a chore, okay, but if you believe in it, it'll eventually pay off. And the beauty of it is that once you get it completed, it's yours forever. You can exploit it forever. You can own it forever. You can reprint it till the cows come home. So it's that's the one advantage you have in just getting it done. Yes.
So that's Cryptid Core. Hey, Retro, you were one of my great finds. I was the one who said, "Hey, you got to check this out," and then they were like, once they actually saw the artwork, they were like all in. I read the first issue, and
It was not a hard sell.
No, it's amazing. But you know what? The thing about Cryptid Core is he did everything right. Like I think there's maybe one or two pages where people are standing around talking, but there's just enough new characters. They're kind of based on cryptids that you know. The tropes are all in the right place, and then it's just like bam, 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 action, 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 and the art is amazing.
Yeah, that would make a good Netflix series for sure.
Oh,
Okay.
wherever he wants to take it.
How is AP hoping to pass the company torch to the next generation of creators? That's an interesting question. What does he mean by next generation of creators? I'm assuming we're working with the next generation of creators. AP has been around for over 40 years. So every 10 years we get sort of a new generation of creators. What's different now is that we're getting a mix of old and new creators. It's just a matter of whether or not we don't know the age of these people who send in stuff to us. We never ask. All we look is the work itself. And if the work is something that we like, we'll make an offer. We'll say yes. We want to publish it. As far as passing the torch, that's really up to the creators. They don't have to come to us. They can do it on their own. Okay, they find other publishers. Our only advantage is that we're transparent. We try to maintain relationships. We don't ghost anyone. Unless they ghost us first.
Where is Larry?
Oh, he's probably busy doing his own thing. So as far as next generation is concerned, I like to think that as long as we're around, we're going to hopefully attract people to our company, and maintain a steady stream of new and interesting material.
I
do too. I love global comics.
Yeah, I think the thing is it feels like all the new creators are in their 40s and 50s now. There's anyone younger than that doesn't seem interested in doing the kind of comics that we like and have traditionally published and all that kind of thing.
Well, I can tell, even though they don't tell me their age, I can tell that they're, fairly new just based on the work that they're sending in and the type of work they're sending in.
Well,
I notice younger creators tend to be more manga, more anime style, and older creators tend to be more classical, more comic books of the Western, look. So it's not too difficult to make the distinction between the two, but I like that. I like the mix because it adds a lot of variety, Global
Mhm.
Comic has started offering other media like YT Review and Shies and what's a YT Review? Young
No,
something.
the YouTube review.
Oh, YouTube. Okay, I'm glad you're here because I never would have figured that out. Shows you.
Well, I've had to edit some of these
Hey, I'm
the
32.
scripts, so
Oh, I'm almost twice your age, Zaid Comics. Let's see.
hey, I'm 32. See, yeah, but like back in the day, it was like older teenagers and guys in their 20s. How old were the Image guys when they broke
Probably
off?
in their mid 20s, I think.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, well,
I
they
know
were,
Rob Liefeld was only like 16 when he started working on Marvel or DC.
and so was Jim Shooter. I mean, usually that there was like that second or third. I don't know what generation those creators were, but it felt like people. There was kind of like after that Marvel Renaissance when the with
They're young
Fantastic.
whippersnappers.
Yeah, see, a lot of a lot of current creators, even if it's their first book, they're still like in their late 30s, 40s, 50s. You know, it's kind of like, yeah, it's like, oh, I'm ready to retire. Maybe I'll try comics. You know,
Well, I like to think that we don't have ageism here. The thing is that I don't know if it's
no, it's
what
not
their age
ageism. It's
is.
just that they're not interested.
Yeah,
It's like
well, I
they
mean,
probably look and they go like, man, half these guys who did comics got screwed, and it's a lot of work for not a lot of money. And
yes, and that's sad because I hate to see comic creators that I grew up with, have have a hardship. You know,
yeah, did you see
I,
that? Did you see that cartoonist kayfabe interview with Tim Vigil? It was like, holy shit.
mhm.
So
It's sad, but that's the thing is comics is a harsh mistress. And
mhm,
you have to be really dedicated to your craft in order to make it pay off. The beauty of it is, and that's another thing, is that you have options now. It
yeah,
used to be you could only work for Marvel and DC. They were the only outlet. Now you have a ton of other small independent publishers, some medium-sized ones, and you can do your own thing with crowdfunding. You can do your own thing with digital. You can do all things on the web. So you have options. And it's just a matter of coming up with something that will pay off for you. It does take work, and that's the one thing that seems to be missing a lot in our society is that you have to be willing to accept nothing's going to be given to you.
mhm,
Same here, 92. A lot of people from 92, you know.
yep.
Hey there, I was 42 when I gave making comics a try. I was just too
Trepidatious.
trepidatious for such a long time. I wasted my comic making life. I need to encourage and support youth. Yeah, the thing I hate to hear that, Joe, but I say it's never too late. You
Well,
know how
but
you know
here's
how
the thing.
old Colonel Sanders was when he founded Kentucky Fried? 64 years old.
Yeah, but
Okay.
here's the thing, Ben. The young folks, they're doing it on Webtoon by the millions. I mean, I'm when I say the comics, I'm very careful to say the comics we grew up with and the comics we like. We're carrying on the legacy of everything we liked when we were kids. Because we figure like, well, if I liked it as a kid, today's kids might like it. But they're off doing Webtoons, and if they
Well,
were
you said
inspired by
yourself, but you said yourself the author of Dog Man, uh, is a boomer who just makes up shit,
well,
from stuff he grew up with.
he's more of a Gen Xer, but
Well,
if
okay, he's a
you're
Gen
gonna use it
Xer,
the way the kids use it, where like everyone old is a
but that
boomer.
gives you that just shows you that's proof that you can attract young readers with old shit. I mean, the thing is that everything old is new again. You
Yeah,
know, yeah, agree
yeah.
with Jose.
Well, that's the thing is though that the kids are reading Dog Man, which is published traditionally by a very big legacy publisher. They're reading that, and then they're going off to their own platforms and their own places to tell their own stories someplace
Right,
else
but
separate
these
away.
kids never heard those jokes before. The
That's
thing is
true.
funny is funny. Okay,
That's
if
true.
if he is or the is it's a he or she.
Dave Pilkey's a he.
It's a he. Okay, he knows what makes people laugh, no matter what age, you
Oh
know.
yeah, and you're
You know,
right. I mean, the first time I saw the Three Stooges, I thought that was the funniest shit ever, and I
it
thought it,
still is.
but it was already like old and black and white the first time I got around to it,
Mhm.
and he's basically doing the same thing. He's just recycling Three Stooges and vaudeville jokes, um, in a format that kids are willing to, consume.
What Joe says here, and this is I agree with him here 100%. All one has to fear is the fear of giving it a try. Yep, exactly. Thus, I will always be ready to help new folks try nothing. See, that's another thing is that if you have a great idea, okay, for a comic book, then don't keep it locked up in your head. Okay, put it on paper, share it with the
Mhm.
world. You may have the greatest comic book idea ever to grace mankind, but it won't do you any good if you keep it locked in your head. You know, give it a
Mhm.
try. Give it a if it fails, it fails. Okay, at least you
Right.
can, and then you can maybe learn something from it. Says, well, why did it fail? Why didn't it take off? You know, well, maybe if I change this and change that. I mean, you have to realize that people, a lot of famous people who have made it in the creative world, they started off. I'm sure every single one of them start off with a failure before they finally found success.
Mhm.
You know, and I mean, like Charles Schutz, you know, when he started off, he didn't start off with Peanuts. You know, he did these little gag cartoons that were forgettable. Nobody remembered them, you know, until he finally hit on them with Peanuts. And
Oh
even
yes.
Peanuts wasn't originally a big success. You know, it took a while for him to catch on.
Stan Lee was in his 40s before he started the Marvel Age, and like in today's terms, that would be like being in your 60s. And he farted around with a bunch of joke books and gag strips and
Yeah,
a
he
whole bunch
says
of
here,
stuff.
Joe says, there just isn't a publishing infrastructure anymore here in America from creation to customer hands. Well, there is, but it's antiquated. Okay, it's
Yeah,
no longer as lucrative as it used to be. You know, the diamond was a symptom of the old way of doing things. You know, and that failed spectacularly. You know, there are publishers. There's still um, um, distributors out there, but they're certainly not at the level of Diamond, you know, for sure. And and for us, it's harder because they charge us listing fees, which Diamond never used to do. You know,
right.
Diamond used to just take anything as long as it was ready to go. You know,
Well,
and you could, yeah,
that's
go
not
ahead.
Lunar's not charging you the listing fee. It's massive
Yeah,
to get into the Lunar catalog. So
right. But there
yeah,
are venues now. Like I said, you can do digital, you can do crowdfunding. You know, you can. There's still publishers out there who do direct market still. You know, and so there are other ventures, and you could sell it yourself. Do what Eric July does. He has his own website that sells his own books. You can just buy directly from him. You know,
right.
class of 1994. A lot of '90s kids in here.
Hmm.
Fear, like killer. Yes, I must not fear. You know, thankfully, there's a growing interest in zines, both digital and print. Yeah, I haven't seen that many, to be honest. I mean, are you talking about fanzines? I'm assuming.
No, there's some sort of zines are kind of making a comeback. Back in the 90s, I used to get Fact Sheet 5 all the time. So
Ah,
I thought I
the
was
more,
one of the cool kids because of that.
the more zines, the better. Yes, I agreed. More zines, the better. All those creators are overnight sophisticates in the making. Yeah, it's easy to it's easy to admire someone's success, but very few people saw the work that had to go into it to be that success. You
Right.
know, unless you inherited, you know, unless you were a trust fund kid, you know,
Nepo baby.
yeah, it's difficult to start from scratch, but it's not impossible. Okay,
Hmm.
people have done it, and there are many examples of that. You know, it's just a matter if you have a good idea and you're willing to put in the work. Jay Ryan is the mind killer. I'm a boomer, so what's Jay Ryan all about?
Jay Ryan's the art and times of Jay. He's in the chat. They're
Oh,
roasting
okay.
each other.
He is the mind killer. Beware of him. say guys. All right. All right. So the next thing about trying to be a success, as I mentioned before, is if you're going to start your own company, you know, run it like a company. Okay. It's important that you realize that, let's just say you do a comic book and it's a huge success. You make more money you can possibly imagine. Don't blow it, by buying things that aren't directly, uh, part of the comic book company. I mean, if you use it to pay your bills, okay, fine, but just realize all the money you spend on something other than making your next comic, is money that's not being used to make your next comic. So when the time comes to make your next comic and you've spent all your money, then you'll be in the exact same spot you were when you made your first comic.
I'm going to start my own comic book company with blackjack and hookers.
Crowdfunding presents an issue, the issue of getting lost in the noise. That means one has to, yes, but if you have a good product, I think it'll be noticed. I think that it's, if you present it well, it's not impossible to overcome. To be that Horton Hears a Who thing, where you stand out.
The current state of Kickstarter or crowdfunding, which is essentially like another word for Kickstarter. You can here's one word key to success on Kickstarter: boobs.
Well, sometimes, but not all the time. And if you're going to do boobs, at least, do something different with them. Many independents are publishing short stories or chapters of a long story in a zine format. Okay, now this zine thing, I'm not familiar with it. You're going to have to show me some examples of that. Yeah, sure. Okay, so back to the business aspect of it. Okay, so if you want long-term success, okay, manage your money. Okay, always set aside. If you make a profit, okay, you set that aside so that you can finance your next comic. Maybe spend a little bit more, on advertising or promotion or, doing better, or set it aside, to because you have to understand that, if you're expecting comics to provide you a living, you're going to have to do calculations on how much you have to actually make in order to maintain that lifestyle. You'll have to calculate what your rent is, your utilities, your living expenses, all that stuff, in addition to your time and printing and shipping, and promotion, and see what that final number is. Okay. And see if you can sell enough to go over that number,
Yeah, and figure out how many cup of noodles you can eat in a week too.
Yeah, that'll kill you. Remember, United Fantasy Organizations needs new alive. Oh, I'll have to check that out. That sounds. I learned something new today. Oh,
And learning is half the battle.
I've been seeing a lot of novels and Kickstarter campaigns being advertised on YouTube. Yes, YouTube is getting quite a ground to promote items now. I've seen YouTube people just selling stuff on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's really becoming different than when it used to be just nothing but cat videos, and bloopers. So anyway, that is another thing you need to take into account if you want to have long-term success. Manage your money. It's the most important thing. So and those are really the things that make the allow you to have, I think, a modicum of success. Now, if you happen to be lucky and your first book out of the gate, nets you that 6 or 7 figures, then congratulations. Don't blow it.
Yeah.
Reinvest it into something that for the long term, or you just take that money and play the stock market.
Well, let me throw this out there to the zine guys. I've noticed like a lot of the YouTube, I mean, a lot of the Kickstarter campaigns have somewhere between maybe when the campaign ends, and sometimes they end successfully, and it looks on paper they've got like $20,000 in the bank and blah blah blah, but they're only selling like somewhere between 150 to 300 copies of the book. And to me, those feel like zine numbers because back in the day it was like a that. I mean, Antarctic Press did pretty good with 1,000, 1,200 copies, and like really good was 3 to 5,000 copies. Am I wrong, Ben?
Well, back in the 80s and 90s, it was not unusual for AP to sell between 5 and 15,000 copies on a regular basis. It was
Right,
not unusual. It
right,
wasn't until like the 2000s, that sales really started to tank. You
right.
know,
But I mean, you still did okay. You didn't. I mean, you weren't like going out of business with 1,200 copies of an average title, right?
Mm-mm. If a book sold 1,200 copies, which it did, okay, we depending on the book, we would still publish it. It
Yeah,
was better. It was better to lose a little bit of money and get it out there to get the reputation of soliciting comics and not getting them out there.
right.
You know, and that to us was really important. We were willing to lose a little bit of money on a book just to maintain, a presence on the newsstand. I
So
mean, this
what did you have to sell to be profitable? What was like minimum number of copies would be like,
Well, at the time, the cutoff was 2,000 because we were using Brenner printing at the time, and the minimum
right.
number of books we had to print was 3,000. Okay,
Oh,
so if we sold 2,000, that would cover the print cost, and the
mm,
shipping and everything else, with 1,000 copies left over.
wow.
And that we could make our money by selling the remaining 1,000 copies over a period of time. You
Mm,
know, so anything below 2,000 was considered a money loser. Yeah.
mm, okay.
So, so that was the thing, and we've had several books that were actually money losers. Among those, Gold Digger. When it first
Yeah,
came out, Gold Digger was a money loser for a long time. But the beauty of it was that it quickly gained a following. And then it started the sales. The thing was, it bucked the trend. Okay, when a book starts, the sales start to go up, then you have something there.
right, right.
I would rather have a book, uh, I mean, there's a lot of books that debut high and then they eventually lose readership over time, you
Hmm.
know, uh, and um, uh, and but Gold Digger was the opposite. It started off low and then it gained readers over time, and that's what we want to see. Always rather be there.
You want me to read these out loud for you, Ben?
Sure, you go right ahead.
Okay. I do this professionally, you see.
I
Always heard
know.
this is like doing story time, except I don't have to do pig voices.
Yes,
Always heard always heard that if you didn't have a significantly sized pre-existing mail list or social media following, then you should have low expectations for a Kickstarter.
um, I mean, you should always have good expectations, you know. Uh,
Well, yeah, but low expectations. Because again, we're talking the success stories were Richard C. Meyer, Eric July, Ethan Van Sciver, and they were like blowing. They had tens of thousands of people watching them on YouTube, and that translated into or even hundreds of thousands of people, and that
well,
translated into tens
but
of
that,
thousands of sales.
but like I said before, they earned that. They did the work.
Yeah,
Okay, I mean, you can do it too if you're willing to put in the work. You're willing to put in 5, 6 years, of work into it. You can, possibly match that as well.
I
But
think part of the problem is like if you're using YouTube. Um, that whole era of comics YouTube, and not just them and what they represented, and the group and all that. I just mean like anybody on YouTube talking about comics. That boat seems to have sailed, and I don't know where else you would go. I heard there's like a comics. I don't have TikTok, and I've heard there's a comics TikTok, but it's still very similar to what's up with YouTube. It's just there's not a like the last one of these we did. We had almost like what 300-400 views,
mhm.
and I thought that was pretty good, all things considered. It's not a flashy show. Um, we're
but
not.
we're honest.
Well, I'd like to think we're entertaining. We're educational and entertaining, at least.
Oh
It's
yes.
this is like hanging out at the comics. I mean, this show is like us hanging out at the comic store, talking shit about comics. And as I tried to mention last time, and Larry, did his Larry thing. Comics, the Comics by Perch guy said that it felt like 25% of comics people just walked away. And it wasn't just the lockdowns. It wasn't just infighting amongst comics fans. It was probably a combination of that and a lot of other things, including prices, comic stores closing. Um, my comics
Or it could be could be the content.
could be could be all those things, including the content.
Hmm.
The store I went to, the guy died, and so we kept ourselves together for another few years after he passed away, and just met up every week in his honor. And then with the lockdowns and the Denny's we'd eat at that burnt down, and we just kind of went to the Four Winds. So um, and I think that I mean our specific experience is unique, but I think something like that's just sort of happened everywhere. And so when 25% of your audience just like walks away, that's a lot of money walking away too, and a lot of audience walking away. So I don't know where you would go to build up some kind of social media presence, because whenever I post anything I've done on social media that's a comic book, um, the views are significantly less than when I post a cute animal video, or or something funny, or something about. I could post something about Weird Al and get more views and likes for that than anything I've actually done in comics. So
Let's see here. Yes, my main goal of the present issue is to gain the financial capital for the next issue, slowly building like a snowball. I mean, time of my life. Well, that's the important thing is having a time of your life. If
mhm,
it becomes a chore and becomes not satisfying to you, then there's no reason for you to waste your time and effort. Find something else that makes you happy. Life's too short to not to be happy.
and keep your shirt, for God's sake.
The capitalist of financial reality, there's attention has to be paid to the. Well, yeah, I mean, come on. Yes, every one of those. Yeah, well, unless someone's going to pay you to do the comic, that's the reality of it. You
Mhm,
have to make money. If you break even and you're happy with that, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, but the idea is that you want to make enough so you can do more. You can get better paper, or maybe you can finally quit your job you hate and do spend all your time on comics. If you can make enough to do that, then that's fantastic. I think a
let me
Kickstarter
let me
campaign
wait,
on
wait,
a third.
let me read it. Let me read it out loud, because if
Okay.
somebody's like folding laundry, they need to hear this. So I think a Kickstarter campaign on a third volume does better than the first, because you have an established customer base. Also, you have a chance to sell the old customers who want to catch up.
Yeah.
Sell the old to new customers who want to catch. Okay, so yeah, you can do add-on back issues and stuff like that.
Right. You can build over periods of time. When the more material, like I said before, the more material you generate, the more you have.
Hmm.
And that is the currency, of your company is
Right.
the material you produce. And the more material you produce, the more you're able to take advantage of that. There are nearly 4 billion people on this planet. You can't tell me every single one of them has read your comic. Okay, so there's always a potential reader out there who's never discovered your comic.
Right.
What you're aiming for is to find that potential reader out there among the 4 billion people on this planet that hasn't read your comic, is willing to buy it and try it out and become a fan.
Hmm.
Every single comic, every single customer you get, is one more notch that you can use to promote and get your next comic sale.
Hmm. We got Smiley.
I'll
We're
smile.
smiling at each other.
Brick and mortar equal location, location, location. Publishing and YouTube
YouTube.
content, content, content. Well, content, but good content. It's content that's entertaining. That's the thing. People don't want to be bored, and if you don't entertain them, they're not going to stick around.
Unless you happen to be Mike Zero, then you just put out 3 videos a day of just made up bullshit, but there you go.
Well, I mean, it may be bullshit, but it's at least entertaining bullshit. Very, very true. Our little challenge has reached 50,000. Holy, see, that's very impressive. 50,000 subscribers.
Wow. Wait, Retro Days, is that the name of your channel? Is Retro Days? Answer when you get a chance, please.
I mean, even if you've got a fraction of those people to buy your comic, that's pretty impressive.
All right, I'm going to be a little rude and check out Retro Days for a second.
Yeah. I mean, if you do the math, let's say you have, if you do the math, let's say you have 50,000 subscribers, and let's say 5% of those will buy your comic. That's what is that? 5,000 times 5%. That's 250 people, and if each of them spends like $25 on your comic, you're talking $6,250 right off the bat.
Ben,
that's just 5%.
Ben, you and everybody need to look at the Retro Days. It's all one word the way he has it here, and spelled DAZE. You need to look at this YouTube channel. This is what he's talking about. He's got 50,000 subscribers, 50.1 subscribers.
That is fantastic. You should take advantage.
But it's all it's like Satanic Panic Remembered, After School Specials, weird 1980s characters, and Max Headroom's there.
Festive, he has an audience.
Characters.
He needs to take advantage of that. These
thumbnails are great too, man.
I mean, I quite frankly, I don't know why he would bring his stuff to us. But that's kind of audience. Even if you got a fraction of that to buy his comic, he'd be doing really well, to be honest.
Yeah. Did you read the Joe's? Is it Joe's at Home?
Joe, yeah, his name is Joe.
All right, so Joe said, I don't know if you read this out loud. I know several novelists got their start building a following via fan fiction. 50 Shades of Grey was a Twilight fan fiction, for example. Also, Leah Moore, who's done a shit ton of stuff for Marvel, got to start doing Harry Potter fan fiction. Mm-hmm. And Marvel found, she didn't even submit. Marvel found her. The thing, so what you were saying, Ben, about like the grind, that is also true with regular book writing. So it's no secret. One of the nicest things you ever said to me was a couple of weeks ago. You said that I am completely unsuited for the grind of a monthly comic book. But when I have plenty of time to do one thing, I do great. And that was very kind of you to say, and I'm taking it to heart. But also, I've been thinking that for a while too on my own, and I wanted to look at part of my whole thing, as I've hinted before, is artists will flame out on me, and I have to go through at least 3 artists before I can get like one comic out. It's like all these false starts and missed deadlines, and my girlfriend's cat got sick, and I spent all the money that you gave me for the advance, and I have to get a higher paying job and all this crap. So, but I have stories I want to tell, so I thought, well, maybe I'll just like cut the crap and write regular books. I work in a bookstore, maybe I should write books. But there's a grind to that too. I mean, especially if you're doing indie stuff. And the guy who said like the more backlog you have, the more you can possibly make. That definitely works for independent book publishing.
Mm-hmm.
Since I don't tick any boxes.
Think you're doing prose then?
Huh?
Think you're doing prose instead?
Yeah, I'll just do prose. I mean, Edgar Rice Burroughs is my hero, so that's what he wrote. So maybe I can follow.
Well, maybe we should bring back the pulp novel.
So there's a website called Royal Road where all that's happening now. So I'm gonna have to. I've been looking at that very seriously. Plus, the source. Well, we'll talk about that some other day. But anyway, yeah, I definitely want to do that. And so, but it's the same rules. You have to have a. If you want to make money, if the story you want to tell takes a back seat to you want to make money, you definitely have to do the grind.
Hello, KO Reviews So let's see here.
Oh, well, so as I was talking, let's see. Can you go back up to
Mm-hmm.
the tippy
Where?
top there above the howdy? There we go. I think the future of comics lies in making them acceptable to the youth, not necessarily comics for kids, but getting a good entertaining product.
Yeah, they've discovered that it's called manga.
Well, I mean, again, Scholastic has this absolutely unfair. It's like a wall you will never be able to scale, but you can go around it. Maybe you can go under it, but
I think it's the problem is not the attracting young people. Young people will read what they want to read. It says if you're not giving them what they want to read, they're not going to read it. The thing is that if you're not giving them material that they can latch onto and entertain, they're not going to spend their they'll spend their time or their money to read it. You
so
know,
here's the thing, though: where are you going to reach the kids? Because like
they read stuff
Scholastic,
all the time.
well,
You know?
Scholastic has a grip on the book fair, so you're not going to reach them through the book fairs
Hmm.
unless you're with Scholastic. It is an effort to get kids to go into a bookstore. And once they get there, it's going to be, again, mostly Scholastic. Um, and unless the bookstore happens to like you and put your stuff in the foreground on a display, they may not just discover, yeah, the Utes.
The youth.
Uh,
The what? The youth.
the Ute.
The youth.
so, any, so it's like, and so if they're not going to the bookstore, if you can't get them at school, you can't get them at the bookstore, and you don't want to be standing out there in front of the school in a trench coat, getting them in a van full of your comic books. It's like, where else are you going to go? Where else are the kids going? Local fairs, local local Mardi Gras or Day of the Dead thing. I know one guy who had a Hispanic based comic who does a lot of Day of the Dead type stuff. Um, yeah, I mean, I would say instead of going to a Comic Con, find a local fair or something that you could put a table up at because you'd probably reach more kids there than a Comic Con.
Trench coat in the van. Oh, that's kind of
These are the
okay.
kind of
That
pearls you're
actually,
not going to find anywhere else, buddy.
well, that
That's why
actually
you're
brings up
here.
my next topic is that the how to succeed in comics not really trying is that you need to know your audience. Okay,
Mm.
it's one thing to produce something that you enjoy. Okay, but if you want to make it sellable, then you got to know who you're trying to write and draw for. You know.
So Joe said girlfriend's cat itis has been going around. It's a feline pandemic. Just ask my cats, Mr. Meow and Miss Hiss. See,
Yeah, I have three
the
cats of my
girlfriend's
own.
cat
So,
thing was actually a true thing,
oh,
but
really?
I use that as a metaphor for all the excuses I've had to deal with, and some of them are legit, and it breaks my heart. Like if the artist is a friend, and it's like a legitimate, not excuse but reason, it breaks my heart. But that doesn't help me, and that doesn't,
Are you
you know,
talking about excuses that artists make for not drawing your comic? This their cat thing? Is that
that
what that
actually
is?
happened. That is
Oh,
actually a true story.
I believe you, man. I believe.
But yeah, but I mean that's also I use that as a metaphor for like all the lame excuses. But there's legitimate reasons, and I have to put them in the same box because it's all the same thing. Has made me, it's like if I start a project, I part of the reason I'm so slow now is that if I start a project, I'm like, okay, how many artists am I going to have to go through? How many excuses am I going to have to hear? How many months am I going to have to wait before the guy flames out and decides he can't be the one to do it? And it's like, it gets frustrating, and I don't want to lose I don't want to lose friends. So
Well, that's the hazard of the business. That's the thing.
yeah,
You let's see. Joe is right. As I said before, the infrastructure is just broken. You have
yeah.
to make it easy for the books to get in. Well,
Okay,
unfortunately, it's broken because of greed. I hate to say it, but it's true. And just bad mismanagement. The problem was that Diamond had the monopoly for so long, and they got comfortable, got lazy. You know, they didn't update. They didn't try to do anything to make it better. You know, they just let it finally wind down, and it crashed and burned. You know,
And
so
strippers
now
are expensive.
we're rebuilding. Okay, so we're in the throes of rebuilding, and it's going to take time. You know, the thing about it is that we have to start putting out product to give people a reason to return to comic book stores and to return to buying comics. You know, I think a lot of independent comic books are doing that these days. You could be the next big, huge indie comic that people will want to read. You know, and that's you know, it's going to take some time. It can't happen overnight, especially with a crash like Diamonds. Yeah, so, you know, the thing is that we have to support the industry if you wanted to see it survive by putting out product that people will want. You know,
Hmm.
kids go to anime and comic conventions. Do comics sell good in arts? You know, I think they do. I think kids still buy comics. You know, it's just that it's gotten to the point now. It's no longer just an impulse buy. It's an investment now. You know, and that's where I
Well,
think that's where the mistake is. You
well,
know,
number again,
creepy
number.
man.
Well,
A little bit.
you know, the thing with the van. Okay, so first of all, the van idea is actually, you know, I
Like a reading van. You're talking about that.
there,
Like a bookmobile.
legitimately there's like this the millennials are mostly the ones who do it.
Remember the bookmobiles?
There's a lot of bookmobiles going around now. So I mean, but if it was me in a trench coat and a van, that would be like a whole nother story. But like a nice looking bookmobile, um, and then you have like a net and a hook, and you come on, children,
Well, I mean,
I
just
have
let's
some
just show
candy
you.
for you.
Yes, but where can they get it? I used to get comics they get it. Yes, that's the problem. It's
Right.
distribution. You know,
It's
that's a
the
big
comics,
problem.
right? The comics are not where the kids are. The I know that kids. I mean, there's always this argument, like, yes,
But I know where the kids are. They're in school.
well, I've seen
Okay.
videos to the contrary of that.
If you can get a find a way to get comics in schools, okay, I guarantee you that's gonna. Because I tell you what, when my Rebecca is a teacher,
Hmm.
okay, when she was teaching middle school, I would give her boxes of old comics. Okay,
Hmm.
just stuff I couldn't sell, stuff that's old. You know, of course we would vet them before we put them out.
Right.
But every single time she would put those boxes out in her classroom, they would
Hmm.
all be gone by the end of the day.
Oh
Every
yeah,
single one of them. So
sure.
kids want to read comics. Okay, it's just that how do we get it to them? You know, and
Right.
unfortunately, you know, I mean, they sell soda and junk food in schools. Why can't they sell comics?
Well,
You
that again, the junk food and the soda is subsidized by the companies trying to make a lifetime customer out of the kids.
know, right? They get
So,
them addicted.
well, but Scholastic gets their books, which are with their robust line of graphic novels, into schools. So are they gonna be allow you in there too, or when they've got they're the rooster in the hen house?
If I had the money, okay, I mean, honestly, if I had Marvel and DC money, you
Hmm.
know, I would buy vending machines for schools. I would say, I would make contracts with them. Say, look, you know, we want to put our comics into your school. At least they're reading, okay, and we'll make it 50 cents for a comic, something very cheap, $1, you know. I guarantee, and you fill it every week with new material, okay, just like you go in every day to refill the soda machine, and then and hopefully they'll bring a new generation of readers to the country. I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
okay,
it's a big investment, sure, but I think in the long term it would work.
so instead of going in with like floppy comics, go in with like a digest for the
Sure,
vending machine, which is a little
whatever.
more durable. Here's the thing, though. Like from what I've seen and I've been watching these videos of because again, like I'm trying to figure out like what's the kids market now, or what are kids like even these days? Because I sell kids books all day long. So not to brag, because I certainly can't brag about the money. Um, I'm I'm selling to kids probably more than most of the people in the chat right now. And so I hear what they're asking for, and I talk to them, talk to the parents, talk to the grandparents. The parents and the grandparents, for the most part, are the ones with the money, so they're the ones you're trying to sell to. But kids come in with their own money and their gift cards and all that. The money and the gift cards, most of it goes to Dave Pilkey. There's a there's a series about dragons called Wings of Fire. It goes to Wings of Fire. It goes to Raina Telgemeier and her Smile um, Ghost, her books. Babysitters Club graphic novels. Those are the ones that I noticed that the Warrior Cats. Those are the ones that the kids are spending their own money on. In a lot of cases, the parents don't want, wish they didn't spend their money on those. But
Okay, so here.
then there's the ones that the parents and grandparents want to spend their money on, and the parents now, like when I first started, it was like all about the classics. Parents and grandparents wanted their kids to read the classics. Now they're less worried about that. We have a lot of Disney adults who are grandparents or who are parents and grandparents.
Well, I mean, in that particular instance, there's a huge corporation behind those books. We're, what does it mean for the indie publisher, the small little guy who can't get into, the big
Right.
stores,
Yeah.
So Steve Scott here says a lot of artists do not realize that the page rate is too low to accept and bills collect. Uh, well, that is a problem. Okay, the thing is that uh, in my own honest opinion, there's no such thing as a page rate. Okay. You decide how much you're willing to pay an artist, and that artist decides whether he wants to accept it. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, if you offer a page rate that he considers too low, then you either find an artist who's of your who's acceptive of the talent that you're willing to who will accept your page rate. The thing is nowadays is that you have access to the entire world. Okay, a page rate in the United States may not be acceptable here, but maybe in Indonesia or the Philippines or Brazil or whatever,
Mhm.
you may find an artist there who's willing to do it for the page rate you're looking at. So the thing about the internet now is that you have the whole world at your fingertips, and you can find an artist now. Don't get me wrong. I would love to employ, buy American artists, but the unfortunate thing is for a lot of small artists, reality is many of them can't afford, a lot of artists. I mean, there are artists out there, and depending on the level of experience, you're going to have to do some looking around,
Well, I've
and
noticed that Dynamite uses a lot of foreign artists, and
sure,
so does Marvel now too.
mhm,
Is it
because they're
more so even than when they were using those Filipino guys to do like Conan books?
shout out for South Texas. Howdy, howdy, folks. Let's see, we did an episode on book fairs at school. Oh,
There you
very
go.
good. Yeah. See, like I said, schools are where the kids at. That's where we need to sell comics. Nice to meet you, reference, sir. I smell children. What if we aren't allowed within 500 feet of school? Well, that could be a problem. You
Yeah.
know. See, okay, I've been holding on to this for a couple of decades. If publishers work together to produce a digital tablet for magazine and comics and make content, yeah, I mean that might work too, but it'd probably be a lot easier and simpler just to do a website or an app or something else like that, you know, uh, because as it stands, it's still a physical thing, a USB or printed card, and you still have to get it in the hands of the reader. By far the most convenient thing is the app. Viz does it. They seem very successful with it. I don't know about Marvel and DC. I know they have apps too. Am I correct? I don't know how successful they are, but I know that Viz is killing it, with their app, and they still buy manga. They still buy physical manga. You
I'll
know,
tell you what, Ben. Can you hold the fort for a
sure.
few minutes? I'm gonna go get a visual aid in answer to that.
Okay, sure. I'll be answering some of these comments
Cool.
here.
Go for
Ben,
it.
what is the cheapest a comic book of something like 12 pages be printed? Some newsprint comic which could sell for about okay. Now, I'll tell you a reality of it is that there are printers out there who will do as little as 12 pages. I don't know what they cost. I'm pretty sure it's not that much. It depends on how many you're going to print. The print run is always a issue as far as cost. Now, I would probably abandon the idea of newsprint. Very few printers use newsprint. except maybe a few overseas. And the thing about newsprint is just as expensive as sheet fed, to be honest, because I've done the research, and newsprint comics are not as cheap as one might think. Now, if you're talking about the hundreds of thousands of copies, yes, they're dirt cheap. Okay, but you're going to end up with hundreds of thousands of copies. Unless you think you can sell hundreds of thousands of copies, I would highly advise not to bother with newsprint. But that's just my advice. Because believe me, we looked into it, and the math just doesn't work. I too am a teacher. Well, congratulations. I know what it's like to be married to a teacher. Oh, hello from Belgium. Up late at the board, turning out a page while listening. Well, welcome. Hello from Belgium. I hope things are doing well. The home of the country where Tintin was born. Very good. Hello, Steve Scott Art, Belgium. I follow artists from Belgium. Let's see. The capital of the European Union. Ariel Tribunal. Isn't the Smurfs from Belgium too, or is that French? I'm not sure. Does the internet provide equality, or is they equality? Well, anybody can do anything, as far as putting their stuff on the internet, as long as it's legal. So you are limited by bandwidth, I'm sure, and storage space, I'm sure. With equality, I'm sure you're not limited as much. I can't say that for sure. Let's see here. We used to think we were being so cool to sneak in comics to school and putting them in our book switch to reading class. Yeah, I remember those days. Comics were considered trash literature. That you weren't. You were very lowbrow if you read comics, but yeah, I didn't care. I loved comics. I would sneak them in anytime I wanted. We would trade, I would trade with my fellow students. It was fun. We loved doing it. It gave us, something interesting to do. Hello from Berlin. Hello. Let's see. Thank you for that input, Pin. That's exactly what I wanted to know about printing on the cheap. Yeah, the thing about printing on the cheap is that it really, there's a lot more printers out there. So I would definitely ask around. There are definitely printers who are cheaper than others. It used to be very cheap to print overseas, but with the tariffs going on, it's not as competitive as it used to be. So, and plus, there's something you may want to take into consideration is that a lot of foreign printers will not do adult material. So you may want to think about that before you decide to look for a printer overseas. There are printers here who in the United States who also won't do adult material, so you may want to check with that as well. Now, if you aren't doing adult material, then just not an issue. So if you there are a lot of printers out there, so just do your research. Don't be afraid to get quotes, and compare, contrast and compare. Guten Abend, Berlin. Yeah, Guten Tag. My son was, had a class in German. I don't know how much he speaks, but I think he's out of practice. It's high school German. Comic had ads for video games, role playing, and not sure if they can try to get it. Yes, that's when their circulations were in the hundreds of thousands, and where they had a huge reach. I think they still do ads in comic books. I haven't read a modern comic in a long time, so I'm not sure. But I still think they still do ads in comics from outside sources, but I don't think there's as much of a revenue generator as it used to be. I could be wrong. Correct me if I am. People love tangible collecting. In Japan, folk art's a collectible. Slap limited edition art on a garment. Yes, anything can be collectible. I mean, shoot, people collect matchboxes and, things like that. People collect wrappers, candy wrappers. If there's something out there that's physical, there's somebody out there who's going to collect it. It's just a matter of, but sometimes that could be a detriment, because if if a comic book is deemed simply as a collectible, then it loses its purpose of being a comic book. A comic book is supposed to be read and enjoyed, and it's supposed to be disposable. The only reason any comic book has any value is the supply and demand. There's more demand than supply, and if there's if comic books are instantly bagged and boarded and slabbed, while they're new, when there's a lot of them, they did cease becoming, all that collectible. And I sometimes, and this is just a conspiracy theory, sometimes I think the collectible market is all a scam anyway. I think people should just buy comics because they like to read them, not because they want to collect them. But that's just me. I don't plan on doing adult material. I'm asking for the sake of making comics for use. Well, that's great. Then you should have no problem finding a printer. But, like I said, for those out there who are contemplating that, just be aware there are certain printers who won't do it. So just a heads up, so you shouldn't have any problem finding a printer then, and like I said, just doing a simple search will yield you literally hundreds of printers. You just got to do your research. If you can do local, I would highly advise doing local. You have more control over it, and you can make deals, with a local printer,
Oh,
Back already, huh?
hello.
Hello. Yes,
So,
purpose collectible is really more of a false. Yeah, anytime there's something, anytime the comic book says a collector's item, then they overprinted that thing. Yes, on purpose collectible printed by the millions is by division, not rare. Oh yeah, that is so true. That
so
is
this
true.
is so speaking of collectibles. So I was given this. It's
What the hell is that?
Well, I'm going to show you something that I have never seen in the marketplace before. So this is Battlefield Earth. Yes, I do like my pulps and I like
You mean
Edgar
that
Allan Poe.
2,000-page monster of a book?
Yes. So, but look at what they did. This is genius, folks, and I've never seen anybody take them up following their footsteps. So it comes in this package, which you can hang from a spindle, and then inside is this. It looks like a credit card, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
got Frank Frazetta artwork. It's got a description of the book on the back, and it's this. You could put this in one of those like notebooks where you keep your baseball cards or your Pokemon cards or whatever. But look at this, voila! That's a USB, so you can plug that into your computer, and it's the audio book for the 2,000-page monster in there. So instead of getting like 6, 7, 8 CDs or whatever, this is the whole story right there. And you can just plug it in your computer, download it onto your iTunes or however you put your stuff. So you could put issues of a comic on this. Anything you can put on a USB, you can put on this, and then you can just fold it right back up again, and then put it in with all your other books that you collect. But sadly, this is the only one like it.
That's
And
freaking brilliant.
they
How much does it cost to make?
I apparently not much. I mean, however much a credit card, plastic credit card, and a USB with a little USB thing would, whatever.
So you could download like 5 issues of a comic onto a USB and sell it like that.
You could put an entire run on of a comic. I mean, this is hours worth of audio on this thing.
Wow,
So yeah,
that is
whatever.
interesting.
So and they told me that the reason that they never put it on the mass market is everyone they showed it to said it was too easy to steal.
That is true, unless you put it in a vending machine.
Yeah. So, but again, there's your idea of a vending machine. You could put it on something like this.
Yeah, well, depending on you don't have to. You could just sell it direct.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be in a retail outlet.
Can you imagine how cheap it would be to ship this as opposed to like,
Yeah.
a big old Kickstarter?
And this way
whatever?
you can do it in HK high quality, as opposed to like web comics, which are usually low quality. You know,
exactly.
yeah, that would be
So
awesome. That's a great
yeah,
idea.
or you could do audio versions of your comics. Get voice actors,
That seems
real.
sort of like an oxymoron to do an audio version of a visual comic. That
Yeah,
seems kind of weird. Now,
DC
if you
did it.
wanted to do a motion comic, that
No,
would be yeah.
DC did it for Sandman. They did it for Watchmen. They got in voice actors and readapted the story as a audio play. They did it for some Judge Dredd stories. It
Look at
wasn't
that.
super
Costs
successful.
for these are only 60 cents to $2. Well, that's way cheaper than actually printing a comic.
So they were planning on selling this for I think $30 because not because of the manufacturer, but because of the content. It took them. I forgot how many voice actors. It's 60. They paid 65 actors, 198 characters, and 150,000 sound effects on this thing. So
Craig on review says he read that book. Wasn't that a series of book?
you're
My
thinking.
understanding it was just one book, wasn't it?
So this is one book. You're probably thinking of Mission Earth, which was 10 books.
Okay, because I
So
have the Battlefield Earth book, and it's a monster tome.
it is.
Yeah.
It's it's the best of everything he wrote. He he was afraid that the pulp magazines were going to disintegrate, so he kind of repackaged all the different kinds of stories he wrote and made
Yeah,
one big
you
story
could
out.
actually offer that as a Kickstarter add-on if you really wanted to.
Yeah,
That would be very simple to do, to be honest. You
yeah,
know, and
but
that would be
but
and
this
then
has
I would
all.
actually become collectible because you could do different kind of artwork on there. Do a sort of presentation. That's very interesting. Very interesting. I'm
Yeah,
getting ideas.
it has all the collectability of a trading card, all the practicality, all the entertainment that you can fit onto it, and
Let's
I-
pirate. Let
uh,
pirates pirate. It's the tangible limited that will drive sales of the unit. Yeah, pirates are going to pirate. What are you going to do? The
you
thing
know,
is to make the most as you can in the first run and not worry about it afterwards.
I would say 90% of the pirates were never going to buy your stuff in the first place. And
Well, I mean, that's not necessarily true. I think they just can't afford it or they don't want to pay for it.
well,
The reason that they pirated to begin with, I mean, why would you waste your time to pirate something you weren't going to want to read?
I mean, sometimes people pirate things, especially if the pirate supports the arts. The pirate might have just pirated to see what it looks like, and if they like it,
Arr.
they'll buy and support the real thing. I mean, you might gain a loyal, devoted fan who buys everything you buy because they pirated something for free and liked it.
Well, I mean, it's one of those slippery slope things where I don't support piracy at all. But at the same time, I'm a realist and know that I can't prevent it. So
Well,
you have to decide whether or not it's worth the effort to try to crack down. I like to think that people with far more resources and ability will take care of that for me. So I don't have to worry about it. But if someone was willing to steal something I created to read it, you know, I'm sort of flattered by that in a way.
well, a lot of like Stephen King said, when books have run their course, they get returned to the publisher and they go to a clearinghouse, and then so when you see those sale tables, actually when you go to CVS or whatever your local drugstores and you see those cardboard tables with all the sale books in them, those
Hmm.
are called remainders or sale, or you could call them sale books.
Right.
Barnes and Noble has a shit ton of them. They have a whole area devoted to that. So I used to do that at the bookstore. I was in charge of that when I worked when our bookstore had a bigger selection.
Hmm.
And I
I
was
re-
told Stephen King loves those because he gets a whole new audience from them. Because
yeah.
somebody might not want to try a $30 Stephen King hardcover, but for $7.98, it's like, oh, let's see what this King guy's all about.
Mhm.
And
Sometimes they'll even let you read the first couple of chapters for free just to get you interested in it.
yeah, well, Stephen King, you have to read the whole book and get to the end because sometimes those are trash. That's the only way you
What?
can make a
Imagine
fair decision.
God? Are you serious?
Yes, Stephen King's endings are notoriously awful.
There
But
should be physical copies of every comic made. The physical will outlive the digital, as we don't need to plug in a book to read it. It will be hard to find a PDF to file in a trunk 40 years from now. Well, he's not wrong, but at the same time, you know, uh, they
at the
say
same
the
time,
internet
there's
is
like,
forever. Uh,
well, at the same time, we don't have the curated system. One of the discussions we need to have someday, Ben, is the importance of editors, because there's a lot of okay comics out there that, um, especially
well,
especially on Kickstarter, where it's like one guy's vision, it's the story he wanted to tell. He, however he did it, he or she did it. They pushed it through and got it on Kickstarter, and Kickstarter fulfilled it, and got it. They got it in the hands of the fans. But what
well,
they
I mean,
really needed was somebody to go through and take care of the punctuation, the
okay.
grammar.
Hold on there. Okay. I mean, I agree with you, but there are two types of editors. Okay. There's the editor who drives the story, who oversees the production,
Yes,
who knows where to, and then there's the copy editor who
right,
does the proofreading. Okay. So there is a distinction between the
right,
two. Two of them are not exactly the same as the other. Now, it is a talented editor who can do both, you know,
right,
uh, and if you can do both, then great. But I am an editor in this so much I know how to steer the direction of the comics that AP is going to do. Well, you're more on the copy editor side, where
right,
you make sure that it reads well, the punctuations are correct, and the spellings are correct.
right.
So there's a difference between the two. You know, and
There's a lot of, right. I'm 99% just a proofreader or copy editor. But
right.
I wish there's a lot of stuff that I read that I wish that at some I could have been before the first word of the final script was written. I could have said, like, you really need to fix the pacing on this. You really need to.
Well, I would agree with you in so much if that was a company owned property, but with a creator owned, you have
Yeah,
less leeway because the creator has a certain vision of what he wants to do, and you can only do so much,
right,
because otherwise, unless he's willing to go back and change it, then it's difficult. But now with a company owned product, it's easier for us to make corrections, if it's within our power to do so, you
right.
know. But yeah, you make a good point, and I think a lot of I think the loss of editors to steer, a title is
Hmm.
being lost, especially in the big two, companies. You know,
Right.
the piracy is almost always a service problem and not a pricing problem. What does he mean by service problem? What do you think? What do you think is?
Maybe the availability, because like I could pirate 50 Marvel titles right now, and have them on my computer, but then but I don't want to have to drive to the comic store and uh,
Well, I assume it's more of a pricing problem because no one wants to pay for it. That's why they.
no, no, no. A lot of it's the convenience, and a lot of it's not knowing what you're getting. I mean, sometimes, I mean, how, especially now, especially with variant covers and all that. I
Mhm.
see some really kick-ass covers, and then like you look at the inside, and it's like that is clearly not the guy who drew the cover. So comics,
Mhm.
that whole mentality of the comics becoming like a trading card, and the content on the inside not mattering.
Yeah, it's getting that way, isn't it?
Well, by the way, too, there's a woman on YouTube that I subscribe to. She's a editor for hire. You can like if you're an independent creator and you want like an outside opinion. There's a woman named Nonsense Free Kristen. Well, she doesn't really do comics, but she has talked to comic creators.
Well, that's yeah, that's nice to know. If you want to hire an editor, they're certainly out there.
And it's worth it before you even get to the first nonsense free Kristen. She's on Substack, and her videos are on YouTube, and she's
Yeah.
sassy, and
Well,
she talks about sci-fi and fantasy
I
stuff.
would think that would be good, but the margins are so thin on comics, it's just not even worth it.
Right.
So I mean, I could see why. I would see if you were doing very well, yeah, you could hire. But if you're like us, where the margins are so thin, it's just
Mhm.
not worth it. No, we just have to be more diligent in our own, copy editing. So the
Right.
internet is forever until the power goes out. Well,
It's
that's true.
true.
That's
Yeah.
true. Where the first EMP pulse hits, we're back to the Stone
You're
Age.
going to be coming to me and all my Devo CDs.
I know people who pirate but turn around and buy the original so they have the tangible. Well, I hope that's true for the most part. I'm not sure. I think some people like to pirate, or not like, some people pirate because they want to give it a try, and they find out they like it, then hopefully they'll be a supporter.
Yeah.
Let's see here. How do you find a good editor? Well, you can find them online. Apparently, Steve found one.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's basically you can hire them, or you can just find someone who's good at copy editing. You yourself as a creator are the editor. You're the one who makes the decisions on where the direction the story goes. How the story is being told, who's the artist, things like that. Makes you the editor. Now if you want a good copy editor, either you hire somebody or you do it yourself, and hopefully you're good at catching mistakes.
So on my other 2000 AD podcast thing, there are there are people who work for 2000 AD, which for those of you who don't know, it's the company that brought us Judge Dredd, Rogue Trooper, Nemesis the Warlock. Grant Morrison got his start there. Pat Mills, Garth Ennis, pretty much every major British guy you've heard of in the last 30 to 50 years got their start there. And the editors, they've got in the comic, they have a fictional character called Tharg, who's like the alien editor of the comic. But the actual human editor behind that character, some of those guys are legendary. And some of them were also good writers in their own sense. And like you said, Ben, because the IPs are all owned by the publisher, they've steered the nuggets of good ideas into great characters and great stories over the years. But I've also seen what happens like when those guys leave 2000 AD and don't have those editors, and it's crazy. Like some of the best work they ever did in their careers was with those guardrails that 2000 AD had in place, and them trying to work around those guardrails and being subversive, and but also keeping the structure of a good story. And then they go to Vertigo, and it's like they're let loose, but then the story structure falls apart, or the ideas are just too strange, or they don't have any guardrails, and they go too far out into
Yeah,
the.
they don't have like somebody that says, that's not such a good idea.
They don't have a good collaborator, and
Well, I mean, like, George Lucas is a perfect example of that.
yes,
When he did the prequel series, he didn't have anybody that says, "Hey, George, that idea sucks. You
oh
need
my
to
god,
drop
that
it."
yeah, that
And
Rob McCallum guy was
nobody was there to steer him, or to
right.
tell him, that he shouldn't have done that. But hey, if he had George Lucas money, I know I can understand why he didn't think that he needed to listen to anybody.
Mhm.
Oh, it says here, Joe says, I remember reading Mad Magazine during Hurricane Gilbert. Oh my gosh, by candlelight, webtoons are awesome, but I believe they ought to be printed for the sake. Well, I mean, they have the choice of printing it. It's not they could do it very easily if they wanted to. My understanding is that webtoons have a different format, so you'd have to reformat everything for print, and that may take, or maybe, you know, what does well on webtoon won't necessarily do well as a physical comic. I don't know.
Au contraire, mon frere. Their webtoons are being published as books now.
Oh, well, that's
Yeah,
great.
they have a Harry Potter ripoff called Hooky. They're up to volume 3, and that thing's a freaking bestseller. They have a one called Lore Olympus that they published as a book that made the bestseller list.
Well,
A lot of
good.
teen
So
romance.
there is precedence.
Yeah, so they're taking the best of their best and making books out of them.
All
So
right. So Joe says, I self-published a comic book about 7 years ago. Holy jeez. Without an editor to save money. I reread it about a year later. Cringe.
yeah.
Well, we all look at stuff that we've done many, many years ago and say, boy, did I do that? But, you should be proud of whatever you do. Even if you think it's not up to the expectations that you currently have, the mere fact that you did it and it's out there and you published it, don't be ashamed of that. You should never be ashamed of what you've done. I mean, I'm sure,
Even Ben is proud of Obama.
the thing is, I appreciate every single thing I've done, no matter how bad it turned out, because I did it. It's there, it's completed. I can use it any which way I want. I could redo it if I wanted to. The fact of the matter is there. I'm sure when Ed Wood made Plan 9 from Outer Space, he didn't intend it to be the worst movie ever made. I'm pretty sure he sincerely thought he was making a great movie. And if he was alive today, he probably would look fondly back on it. Who knows? But anyway, you should never be ashamed of what you've done.
Right.
Let's see.
So the guy who made Star Crash made an semi-autobiographical movie a few years ago on
King Spot does a lot of webtoon to comics. Ooh, that's good. I hope they're having much success with that. I did a lot of stuff for webtoons for a little while, but I just abandoned it. It was just too much effort and I wasn't really getting much out of it. So and it was a lot of work. Doing webtoons.
To be fair, your stuff wasn't formatted for webtoons.
It was not formatted, yes, and that's the thing is, I had to decide whether it was worth the effort to format it.
Which is fair.
Yeah. Retro, they put out one novel, proofread the whole thing 3 or 4 times, still find some errors. Went through. Well, nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect, Retro Days. I'm sure every single book in the existing has at least one error in it. Went through, still found errors. Don't be ashamed.
Especially now, the editors are like right out of college, and
I mean, just look at Facebook, just chock full of errors. It's like, does anybody not proofread their own thing? So I honestly believe a lot of those, headlines or whatever clickbaity things are either written by people who don't, English is not their first language, or
Yeah, well, you know what though, I know that there's people who would rather saw their hand off than use AI, and Grammarly is a form of AI. But I mean, it really takes little. Grammarly's like the most low key version of AI, and it's useful. Just run your freaking thing through Grammarly. God's sake!
There you go. That's your editor.
Yeah.
Editors are key. Fresh eyes on work prevent regretful sighs from a work. Yeah, well, that's true. But sometimes, when you're on a deadline, you can't do everything. You try to do the best you can. Make as few mistakes as you possibly can, but things slip through the cracks. Web2 makes you sign over the majority of your rights to the IP if they choose it to further the market. Well, I didn't know. Well, that sucks.
Yeah. So you dodged a bullet. You not being
Thank
popular on Webtoons is.
Yeah, I wouldn't work for any company that would take any of my rights away. Let's see.
Because you got to fight for your right.
Fair. To be fair. Some things you don't pick up until you've heard it in audiobook format. Then your brain says, wait, was that actually the text? Yes, believe it or not.
You should, if you're writing, you should absolutely read your writing out loud. That will help you find a lot of the mistakes, and you'll realize like some of the word salad just sounds really stupid when you say it out loud.
Like what Han Solo, Harrison Ford once said to George Lucas, George, you can't read, people don't talk like that. You can write this stuff.
You can write this, but you can't say it.
You can't say it, right? You can write it, but you can't say it. So obviously he was a better filmmaker than he was a writer. So, all right. So I think that's. Let me go. Let's do a preview of what's coming up from Antarctic Press this week. I'm going to share a screen. Let's see. Share screen. Hello. Okay, sharing. Share this window. Oops. Well, that wasn't what I wanted. Okay.
Make sure all the porn's off the screen.
Yeah, I know, right? Let's see. Let me try again.
Yes, it's time to chill, my friends. All right, I'll pick up on the text chats that show up while you're boomerang around.
You go right. I want to figure this fucking thing out.
Unless you're Kurt Vonnegut Jr., you don't have to write in order, and you can have your Wampters and Galifaltons or whatever. Be still my heart.
Okay, I got this done before. Let me see if I'm doing something wrong.
And now it's time to shill, be still my heart. She'll be waiting till for Ben to start.
There we go. Oh no, that's
Infinity!
infinity screen. Okay, I'm a boomer here, so forgive
It's
me.
a Sheila time.
Okay, what am I doing wrong that I didn't do before? Let me see. Yeah, keep them entertained, Steve, while I go through this.
All right. Guys,
Go ahead.
you got any more shall we meet again? Don't know how, don't know when.
Showtime.
Show the tower,
Yeah,
show the
okay, are you caught up?
I'm riffing. I'm waffling and I'm riffing.
Okay,
Anytime you're ready.
all right.
Are you gonna unleash the Kraken?
I hope so.
That's what she said.
What am I doing wrong here?
So, any of you guys seen any good movies? Oh, I didn't. You know what? You got to talk about your movie. I'll talk about my movie just to kill time. So I saw the Bluff. The was it on Amazon. So, needless to say, any movie that has Carl Urban, I'm gonna have to check out because he was Judge Dredd, and I love Bollywood movies, and Priyanka Chopra was in it. So, got to see that too. And it's got the whatchamacallit, the Russo bros who made the MCU great. Wanted to see that. And the movie as a whole was just okay.
Okay, I
Um,
think I figured it out. Let me see.
okay. We need Larry in here to say, Ben, you're
Oh,
going.
there we go. Okay,
Boom!
there we go. All right.
All
Let's see
right.
here. Let's do some. These are books that are supposed to come out this week.
This
So
week, I'm going to my favorite comic book store.
let's see if we can.
I don't care about these losers. What's Antarctic Press
I
Publishing?
know, right? I'm looking for it. The thing I hate about Lunar is they don't put it in by publisher. They just put all the books that are coming out that week, and you have to go through every single one of them to find the one you're looking for. You know, that's the one thing I could say about Diamond's website is that it was very easy to navigate. You know, the Lunar is, I mean, it's okay, but it's a little bit more difficult to go through.
Yeah, I'm gonna
than
see. I'm gonna see all the people in the chat that are leaving in droves right now. Oh no, 23 of you. Thank you, 23 people. We're all best friends. I hope they doesn't
Oh.
drop 20, 25. Oh my God, people are watching you fuck up, Ben. They're here to see.
Oh, well, I need to screw up more
Maybe we
often
should.
then.
Maybe this lesson learned. The more we fuck up, the better the view count.
I don't know.
All right.
I know there's some AP books this week. Let me see if we can find them. You know. Oh, Jesus Christ, where are they?
Drop a link to the AP web. Actually, the AP website's even worse.
Oh, is it? Oh my
It's
gosh.
hard to
Well,
navigate. I mean, needless to say, I've ordered off of it a few times, and I
I'm
appreciate it
sorry.
being there.
We'll try to improve that situation.
Well, I mean, Alfred can only do so much. Have you ever
Yeah.
noticed the trends in comic book cover styles per decade? Yeah, I think Ben misses the old days when like they'd have the hero getting his ass kicked, and then there'd be a voice balloon like telling you the entire plot of the story. Like, if I don't stop getting my ass kicked, Lois is gonna die in a fire, and Crypto's gonna be put to sleep at the pound. I'm making some pages while Ben is stumbling through the website.
I know. I'm so sorry about that.
It's both ends
I'm,
of the
I
productivity
know
spectrum
there's some
happening here.
AP books coming out this week, but just in
Duh.
case anyone wants to see the books that are coming out this week, then
You don't have this on your fingertips. Is there is there a search feature where you can search it by publisher?
I can, but it shows everything that
Well,
AP's
just do
released.
that. We'll talk about everything.
Yeah, but I don't know which ones are coming out that week. It doesn't
Doesn't
go
matter.
by
We got to
the.
talk. We'll talk about whatever they put up. We'll
Okay,
tell everybody
fine,
how great they are.
fine.
Tell
Let's see.
everybody how awesome Solomon Kane is. I mean, Solomon Kane, Shaman Kane is, and well, Solomon Kane's pretty great too.
Okay, here's all the AP stuff that's come out so far. You
Yeah,
know,
so you can actually get this stuff. Get rid of the get rid of Joe for a second, Jose.
Oh,
Get rid of Jose for a second.
sorry.
We love you, Jose, but your time has passed. I want to see Ordained versus Warrior Nun.
Okay, here.
Oh, there was a new. What was that new
I think
Warrior Nun
I
ripoff book?
I think Fur Force #3 is coming out this week. Okay, so here's Superverse Team Up. I didn't know that was already released. That can't be.
Huh.
Let's see, initial. Oh, it's going to be out on the 26th.
Wait a minute, wasn't that April 26th?
I know it says March 20. No, FO initial due date 3/20. In store date 5/13.
Oh, that's
Oh,
the future.
that's in let's see March.
We shall all live so
That's
long.
in May. That's coming out in May.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see
Yeah, you've
here.
already got Shaman Kane #3 up there, so
So
that's
here's
way up.
Kendra #2. That's supposed to be out. Oh, that'll be out in March 18th. So that's actually 2 weeks from now.
All right.
All right, that's
It's a
good.
reason to go to the store, pirate site, whatever.
Yeah. See, Ninja Squad.
Demon Hunters, K-pop, down with the kids.
See, Ninja High School #16 is out.
Oh, I just got that issue of Exciting Comics, so we're kind of in the zone here.
Okay. Are you #55?
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah, that was supposed to be out on the 4th. That was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I also got the one before it, so I have to pay for my AP Comics.
Oh, you can ask us for comps. Let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't see Fur Force #3 is supposed to be out. Oh, here it is, #3. So that'll be out 4/8/20. That's funny. I thought I saw it on the list. So that's April 8th. It says is due. Okay.
When's wait, go back up. When's Shaman Kane hitting the stores?
#1.
Yeah.
Let's see it here. 3/18 the 18th of March.
Okay. So that one's gonna you can't tell it from here, but that one's supposed to have a foil cover, so that's why it's a little more expensive.
Yeah,
But well worth it.
And here's #2. That's supposed to be out in April.
Yes. Dave's like way in advance. You were talking about having your stuff ready in advance. Oh, and what is this cryptid core I see?
Yes, that's supposed to be out in May.
Look at
May
that cover
27th.
though, man. That is like primo 90s style badassery right there.
There's the variant cover.
Dang.
Very good.
Legacy. Fred Perry's got a new book.
Yeah, Dog Supreme trade paperback. Here's Ninja Esco 201. That's supposed to be out in March 25th. So the last week of March, last Wednesday of March. 202 or 201. Wow, here's 202, and that's supposed to be out in May 27th. So,
like, hey, when's I'm supposed to correct Tomorrow Girl 19? When's that?
No, that's not. That doesn't show on this list here.
Okay.
So number A16 is the most recent one, and that's supposed to be out. It says here 121. That can't be right.
Oh, there's been a couple of. Well, you know what? I honestly can't remember what I read because I corrected it and what I read for enjoyment. So.
Yeah, that can't be right. That puts it in January 21st of this year.
Didn't Joe say that one got canceled, like during the transition, the one got canceled and one's coming out before the other? And
that may be so. I'm not sure.
Bullshit. So,
Punchline.
Yep. Punchline.
All right. Well, that's
Furlough. Furlough's another. You got. Look at that. 201.
311. That's we have 311.
How many independent comics do you know reached 201?
Not many.
Nope.
Actually, it's not unusual nowadays. We have several independent comics that have reached issue 200 and 300.
Yeah.
Like Savage Dragon is coming up to, I think, did it already pass 300?
Yeah, but that guy just cranked them out every month, no matter what.
Yeah.
Furlough took a pause. Dog Supreme. So you've got some kids comics, well, family-oriented comics, and also, so Cryptid Core was one that I was like, yeah, you got to check it out. And hey, there's Larry.
Where?
It says, is that the FOC final cutoff orders? Oh, so TG. Oh, so this is how you see all upcoming AP books. FOC is always 2 to 3 months in advance to give people time to order. I picked up the sketch. Oh,
Losers.
K-On Review says I picked up the sketchbook edition of K-Pop and Demon Hunters. I can't wait to warp them. Excellent. Oh, Shaman Kane. I caught a lot of those in Planet Comics. Yes. Dave Broughton published those in the UK first, so he's got a lot of back material, and he's never late.
Have you noticed the trends in comic book cover styles per decade? Yeah, I mean, I have. I don't know if you have. I think nowadays it's all about painted covers, and how it looks in a slab. Back in the Silver Age, it was all about what's going on the inside.
Right.
Enticing story element.
Yes.
During the 70s,
they had dialogue balloons on the cover.
Yes, dialogue balloons. That's something I'm trying to bring back.
Remember when they had those Star Wars issues where it said, keep firing, Chewie, 2 issues in a row?
I'm inking some pages while Ben is stumbling through it. Oh, at least you're getting some work done.
Yeah.
Unlike us. Let's see.
Yeah.
I want to see Ordained versus Warrior Nun. So do I. I am sort of bringing back the quote Warrior Nun universe, back to AP, though I'm not calling it the Warrior Nun universe. We're not calling it Warrior Nun. But one of the deals that was part of the sale of Warrior Nun to Avatar was that all he got was the Warrior Nun name, and the Ariella name and Shotgun Mary. So everything else that was created is mine, so I can still do characters from the Warrior Nun universe. I just can't call them Warrior Nuns, So, so that's my loophole to bringing back some of the characters.
Yeah. We already read all of them.
No, those aren't final order cutoffs. Those are just upcoming releases and past releases.
Well, they have a listing for that. Those, what you were looking at had the final order cutoff, and then it had the date it should be in stores.
Yeah.
The same thing.
I think you're right. So this is how you see. See, I haven't quite got used to the Lunar website. Navigating it is just a pain in the ass. Yeah. I think Larry is correct.
Yes. To give people time to order Niobe, Larry.
Oh, hell yeah. Picked up the sketch for you.
See?
Can't wait to warp them. Yes.
Say nice things about you, my friend.
Hoarder. Let's see. Okay, got all that. Oh, Shaman King. I got a lot of those in Planet Con. Yes, we finally decided to give his own series.
So he later Crooked Painter asks, are the Shaman King books the same stories that were in Planet Comics series?
No, they're all new
characters, all new material.
Yeah, all new material.
Now here's the thing though, if you've been following Shaman King from Dave's own version of it, you might already have those stories. I don't remember if they were early stories that he reworked or if they're a continuation of what we have.
My understanding, it's all new material.
Well, it'll be new to us, so that's the important thing.
Yeah, not printed in the U.S. First time in the U.S.
Well, we're
just call them Warrior Huns.
Don't give him ideas.
Warrior buns.
Don't give him ideas like that. Holy shit.
Hint, wink, wink. We get it. All right. Well, we've been on for over 3.5 hours. I think that's plenty to discuss.
I love talking to you, and I love our chat. But
I love our chat too. I love talking to every single one of you guys. Are awesome, You're
That light
amazing.
ring is blinding the hell out of me. So
So I appreciate you coming on this live stream. It's not often that we get to talk directly to our uh, Battle Nuns. Yes, we had actually I considered that title, Battle Nuns. It just doesn't have the same kind of ring, you know. But anyway, it is a possibility. So anyway, I want to thank everyone who participated. I love you all. It's very great to hear from every single one of you. And until next time, we'll probably get together, hopefully again. And I hope to see you, and we'll talk more about the latest comics, pop culture, and what's going on with AP. So till next time, this has been done, and Steve Ross signing off.